Okay, the time is now 6 p.m. and I will call the meeting to order. Kelly, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Burkhardt?
Here.
Commissioner Eichmann?
Here.
Commissioner Werner?
Here.
Vice Chair Fena?
Here.
Chair Keith?
Here. Commissioner Burkhardt, will you lead us in the pledge?
I would be happy to. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Kelly, may we please have the secretary announcement?
Welcome to the City of Santa Clarita Planning Commission's regular meeting. I would like to offer some information to help you understand how you can participate this evening. Speaker cards and written comment cards are available on the back table, along with copies of the agenda listing the items the Commission will consider tonight. Members of the public have two opportunities to address the Commission, either during the specific agenda item or, if your topic is not listed on the agenda, during public participation. Each person speaking must complete a speaker card. Please place your cards in the tray here prior to the item being discussed. Cards will not be accepted once the public comment begins on an item. Chair Keith will call speakers up in groups of 3. When he announces your name, please be prepared to approach the podium to address the Commission in the order that you are called. Applicants have up to a total of 15 minutes to make their presentation. Each individual speaker will be given 3 minutes to make their comments. When your allotted time has expired, a bell will ring. Individuals not wishing to speak may submit written comment cards. As a courtesy, please silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. We've all had the opportunity to review the minutes from the May 19th, 2026 meeting. If there aren't any changes, I will take a motion for approval.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. The first item before us is Master Case 26-038. Zaruri Chaperon, Associate Planner, will be presenting.
Thank you, Chair Keith. Good evening, Chair Keith and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Zaruri Chaperon. I'm an Associate Planner with the Planning Division. The item before you tonight is Master Case 26-038, a consideration for multifamily and mixed-use housing objective design standards and related municipal code amendments. Over the last year, city staff has been working with RRM Design Group and the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG, to develop objective design standards for multifamily and mixed-use housing projects. Quality design and architecture have always been a longstanding priority for City Council. As you know, the 2009 adopted Community Character Design Guidelines have for years given us the tools we need to achieve the high expectations of the City Council and the community. Recent state legislation, however, wants us to remove our ability to use these guidelines and take our opinion out of the architectural review. One requirement from the state is for us to create objective design standards when reviewing multifamily and mixed-use housing projects. The only tool we will have at our discretion are the proposed objective design standards, which are standards that are measurable and verifiable. Tonight, we'll present our proposed design standards for multifamily and mixed-use housing projects. These standards that we're proposing will follow state law, but allow us to retain some control over design. As shown on screen, several state housing laws cite that unless cities adopt design standards, they cannot enforce design guidelines on qualifying projects. This is because subjective architectural guidelines are seen as a hindrance by the state to the timely review and approval for multifamily and mixed-use housing projects. Per the state, objective design standards would replace the city's discretion with measurable, quantifiable standards to support the development of these housing types. For reference tonight, when I speak to objective design standards, I'll refer to them as design standards. And when referring to guidelines, I'm referring to the city's community character and design guidelines. The proposed design standards will not affect single-family housing, commercial, office, retail, business park, or industrial development, and the city will continue to use the existing guidelines for these uses when reviewing projects. The design standards and updates to the city's review process for multifamily and mixed-use housing projects would help the city also meet its housing element objectives. And so, over the last year, the city's efforts to develop design standards used a SCAG grant, and there were no impacts to the general fund. For purposes of this discussion, the proposed design standards will be split into 4 buckets: site planning, building design, utilities, and mixed-use development. We wanted to develop a practical and implementable document that protects the community characteristics, locks in design elements that the city finds important, and that developers who work in the community are used to. To do so, we're proposing to take a document we know, the adopted community character and design guidelines, and objectify portions of it. The goals for this project are to ensure that the project architecture and site planning continues to meet the high standards of the city, to maintain as much local authority of design review as possible, to satisfy the requirements of the state and provide a streamlined process for architecture and site plan review for qualifying projects, and to include as much flexibility as possible in the city's review process, in this case by introducing an opt-out provision. So similar to other projects like for the Old Town New Hall specific plan and Town Center specific plan, staff held 2 stakeholder meetings earlier this year with members of the local development community. The purpose of these meetings was to help ensure that the proposed standards would be practical and buildable. As always, we didn't want to require standards that would make a building impossible or significantly more challenging to build. Participants received these well, and their primary ask was to create standards that are realistic and don't compromise the functionality of their buildings. They welcomed the idea of a more predictable approval process, but cautioned that standards should be carefully designed to ensure buildings keep their character and are not a one-size-fits-all. Participants also asked if there was a way that applicants could opt out of the standards, and I'll have more information on this on a later slide. Staff took this feedback and incorporated them into the development of design standards. Staff is proposing 63 mandatory design standards that we identified as key components to the architectural review process. These standards are taken from existing guidelines and converted to be objective. As I mentioned previously, the proposed standards will only apply to multifamily and mixed-use housing projects. 99 guidelines will remain as recommendations, so we can still encourage them, but we cannot mandate them. The proposed design standards fall into 3 categories. First, to create objectivity by removing terms like encouraged or should, and adding terms like must and required to the guidelines in order to mandate the standard. Second, to provide standalone, clear, measurable objectives that must be achieved. For instance, with things like distances between architectural features or the number of design elements on a site. And third, to provide a menu of options for applicants to choose from to comply with the standard. These standards will function similarly to existing development rules like setbacks, height limits, and circulation. They'll be predictable, measurable, and enforceable. Design standards will establish minimum requirements, and applicants can exceed them just as they can exceed minimum setbacks or other baseline standards of the municipal code. As I mentioned previously, the proposed standards are broken up into 4 buckets, shown on screen, with some of the proposed subsections. Each of these subsections include design standards and guidelines. I'll share a few examples for reference, which can be found in Exhibit A of your agenda packet as well. In this first example, we propose incorporating enforceable text to create an objective standard that needs to be achieved. We go one step further and add elements that can be verified. It's important to note that the graphic on screen is only an example, and a project does not need to look exactly like this. As you can see, the existing guidelines reads, quote, "Large projects should be broken up into groups of structures of various heights." Not only is this not enforceable because of use of words like should, there's also a lot of subjectivity through use of terms like large, groups of structures, and various heights. On the contrary, the proposed standard includes the word must, meaning the standard must be complied with. It also provides parameters to identify the requirements for each story of the building. An important part of this exercise was to include and respect the characteristics of each of the 4 communities in Santa Clarita, so for Newhall, Valencia, Saugus, and Canyon Country. To do so, the proposed document incorporates verbiage to codify the materials and styles included in the guidelines for each of the communities, and to ensure that each community continues to look like itself. So while the design standards will help applicants understand what needs to be done, the different community styles will identify how to achieve a specific design standard. In reference to the example on screen, should this project be located in Valencia, the building must be broken up by the materials shown on screen. In this way, the building will reflect the Valencia style. The multifamily and mixed-use objective design standards will codify the appearance of each community, ensuring the styles and overall quality the city has become accustomed to will remain. In this second example, the existing guidelines uses terms like may, should, and strongly encouraged to recommend visual interest and ways to activate street corners through architecture. In the rewritten objective standard, staff proposes a menu of options to choose from and measurable ways to achieve the standard to create an active street corner through design. Several examples are provided in the staff report in Figure 1. As an update to Figure 1 in the staff report, the second example has changed from the proposed 40 feet to 55 feet, and the last example has been eliminated from the design standards based on feedback we received. These and other examples are throughout the document and, as previously mentioned, incorporated in site planning, building design, utilities, and mixed-use development. To achieve this, staff is also recommending updates to our review process. If an applicant complies with all of the proposed objective standards, then their architecture review is by default complete. Land use, height, hillside, and ridgeline alteration reviews will keep their discretionary land use reviews, however. Also, similarly, environmental concerns will be addressed as appropriate under CEQA. With that, the proposed revisions to our review process required several amendments to the municipal code. These are provided on screen and in Exhibits C and D of your agenda packet. To also comply with the city's housing element objective, staff is proposing to remove discretionary findings for site suitability for multifamily and mixed-use housing projects. Next, as mentioned, we're offering an opt-out option. With the opt-out option, in instances where an applicant cannot or does not want to comply with the proposed multifamily and mixed-use housing design standards, they'd apply for an administrative permit. Staff would be able to apply the design guidelines for architectural review and work with the applicants on project design. The process would revert back to our current discretionary review for architecture. What this does is it changes the standards back to guidelines. And if the project is in a specific plan area, it would change back to the guidelines of the associated specific plan. This would give the city more flexibility to work with applicants and retain our community characteristics. Several other cities, including Thousand Oaks, Arcadia, Santa Barbara, and Beverly Hills, have also included this opt-out provision for their design standards. However, there's currently no case law that speaks to whether this opt-out of design standards could be successfully challenged. Separate from the municipal code, even with an opt-out process, if the proposed standards cannot be met, and if applicants are able to invoke state density bonus, They have access to concessions and waivers to remove their obligations from meeting the minimum development and design standards. Should you move to recommend approval to the City Council, this project will move on for their consideration with a first reading scheduled for August 25th and a second reading scheduled for September 8th. If adopted by the City Council, an ordinance will go into effect to amend the aforementioned municipal code sections, and a resolution will adopt objective design standards into the city's community character and design guidelines. I've included the draft City Council resolution and ordinance in your agenda packet for your review. All noticing has been completed as required by law, and no comments have been received. The proposed amendments are exempt from CEQA under the common sense exemption. And with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt a resolution determining that the proposed amendments are exempt from CEQA under the common sense exemption and approving Master Case 26-038, recommending the City Council adopt the proposed objective design standards and municipal code amendments. Thank you, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Zaruri. Before I open up for public comment, do any of the commissioners have questions at this time?
I have one quick one. With regard to the opt-out, should the developer of a project take advantage of the... Is that better? You bet. Should someone decide to take advantage of the opt-out provision, does that have any impact on the limited number of meetings and timeframes that we have in order to take a project to approval? In other words, by now working with staff in order to be more subjective in the approval, are we still mandated to stay within 5 meetings and any other time constraints that are there?
Commissioner Burkhart, yes, that's correct. We would be limited to the 5 meetings.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay. Kelly, do we have any speakers on this item? Thank you. Is Bob Kamalza?
Thank you. Bob Kalsa, and I'll be very direct. I support the objective design standards. I just wonder whether 2 items have been considered in this. One is sustainability and the cost of materials. Whenever you put design standards and you make it objective, when you move from subjective to objective, the cost starts to go up. And what my request would be that's one of the reasons why you don't see single-family and multifamily construction on the scale that you've seen earlier, whether it's in the city or elsewhere, because your cost of construction has skyrocketed. It used to be about $125 a square foot, and now it's about between $350 to $500 a square foot, and then you wonder why you don't have affordable housing. And I know that for a fact because I'm a consultant for developers. I'm a real estate broker, so I know these facts. So it's good to have objective standards, but you also got to see if you make them too restrictive, then the cost goes up. The other thing I want to bring out is, with my experience on panels sitting with the LA BizFair and VICA, one of the things that has come out from the Pacific Palisades fire as well as Eaton is the toxicity that has been caused in properties after we've had Corps of Engineers doing the 6 inches of soil removal, and we found that maximum toxic products stored by a homeowner or households is in the garage. And they seep through the soil and they go down to, because you've got plastic materials, you've got, you may have a EV car or a vehicle. Those items go down deeply. If you've got chromium or if you've done chrome plating, that's potassium cyanide, it can go down 300 feet into the ground. The cleanup costs are horrendous. It would be in a parallel with what you got in Whitaker Burmite. So you need the design standards for the garage floor should be such that materials do not seep down below in case of fire, and I would request that that be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. And in my haste to call the first speaker, I didn't officially open the public hearing, so I apologize for that, but it is open. Kelly, do we have any additional speakers at this time? I'll be quick then. Then at this time, I will close the public comment portion of the public hearing and allow the commission to have any additional feedback. Okay.
Well, with that large pause, I will make a motion that we adopt staff recommendation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do I have a second? A second? Kelly, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Burkhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Eichmann,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Vice Chair Faina,
Yes.
Chair Keith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. The next item before us is Master Case 24-093, and Associate Planner Andy Olson will be presenting. We'll give you a moment to set up as you guys switch.
All right. Well, good evening, Chair Keith and members of the Commission. My name is Andy Olson, and I'm an Associate Planner with the City's Planning Division. And as you mentioned, the next item before you this evening is the first public hearing for Master Case 24093, the Belcaro at Sand Canyon project. So as we begin the presentation this evening, I'd like to give you a quick overview of where we're going with tonight's meeting. First, I'll be giving our staff presentation this evening. Patrick de Guzman, one of our senior traffic engineers, will join me as well for a portion of the presentation. And our staff presentation will be approximately half an hour as we give you an introduction to the project and an overview of the draft environmental impact report, or EIR, for the project. Following the presentation, the applicant will have an opportunity to speak as well. They do have a presentation to share with you. And then staff would recommend that the commission open the public hearing and begin to receive public comments on the project. To be clear, we're not making a decision on the project this evening. Our goal this evening is to take all of the Planning Commission's questions and to answer as many of those as we can this evening. For any questions where we need to do a little more analysis and put together answers for you, we will plan to bring those back to you at the next public hearing for the project. And in part, that's because this project is constrained to 5 public hearings as a housing project, and that does include appeals for the project. And with that, we'll go ahead and get into the discussion of the project. So the applicant for this project is New Urban West Incorporated, and the project site is located east of Sand Canyon Road in the community of Sand Canyon. It's east of the current endpoint of Lost Canyon Road, north of the Sand Canyon Country Club, as you can see here on the image on the right, and just south of the Santa Clara River and State Route 14. You can also see that the site is split into 2 separate areas, and that's because the Los Angeles Metro-owned railroad runs through the middle of the project site and splits it into southern and northern portions. This is the site that was formerly known as the Mancara project. That's a project that was considered in the early 2000s, and there was a draft EIR released, but that project was never approved and did not move ahead. So in terms of land use and zoning, this site is a split between urban residential 1 and non-urban 5 zoning. So these are both lower density single family zones. You can see we also have NU5 zoning to the west of the site where there's existing homes, UR1 zoning to the east where there's undeveloped land, and then open space to the north with the river and the south with the country club. And as we get into the project, I want to touch on a couple of state housing laws that are important to note for our discussion. So as I mentioned, the project does qualify as a housing development project. The first law that applies here is SB 330, the Housing Crisis Act, and the applicant has filed an application as an SB 330 project. This law is the reason that the project is limited to 5 public hearings. And in addition, this is a project that the city cannot deny if the project meets our objective standards because of SB 330. The second applicable law here is the state's density bonus law. The applicant has invoked the density bonus law, So in this case, the city's base zoning here is 284 units on site. That takes into account the zoning as well as a reduction in density based on the city's hillside development standards for the slope on site. State density bonus law allows the applicant to request a 20% density bonus because they are proposing a age-restricted, so 55 and up in this context, housing development. In addition, state density bonus law allows the applicant to request waivers from city development standards. So waivers here include reductions in lot sizes and lot widths for all lots, as well as some cul-de-sac and setback standards for some properties. And this results in a development that would look more like a typical suburban development you see throughout much of the city, more so than a estate-type development. Waivers also include a reduction in the 100-foot vertical setback for the significant ridgeline that's on the site. I'll show you that in just a moment, as well as an increase of retaining wall height up to 8.5 feet and length of retaining walls. So in effect, state law here allows for this project to have more units than the city's zoning allows for on smaller lots than our zoning allows for without the need for a ridgeline alteration permit, all due to these state laws that we're working with. So this project is a proposal to subdivide the property and create 341 single-family homes. This would be a gated community and, as I mentioned, a senior community, so ages 55 and up. There are no affordable units proposed as part of the project. The project site here is just under 194 acres in size and would include the homes as well as a recreation facility and amenities for the residents, as well as a public trailhead, public trails, and a city-owned emergency equestrian staging area. Grading would focus on the flatter portions of this project site and would be balanced on site. And there's a few physical features I'd like to note for you on this slide here. The first, again, is the railroad, as we've discussed. And there's also a Southern California Gas Company easement that runs through the site from east to west. You can see that labeled here. There's no homes proposed on this easement area, just the roads that would cross it and then trails. We also have Oak Spring Canyon Creek in the southwest corner of the project site. Development would stay away from this creek area. And the significant ridgeline that I mentioned is on the right side of the project site here. So the applicant originally proposed a development that would encroach onto that ridgeline. However, during the design process, they did pull that back so that the grading stops at the toe of the ridgeline and it is preserved. The last thing I'll note on this slide is that north of the railroad tracks, there would be no homes constructed. This is where there would be development work for the new roadway, but open space, about 39 acres, would be left undeveloped and would be proposed to be dedicated to the city as part of the project here. So taking a look at the same image, just a couple of different items here. First, we have the area where the proposed homes would be located, shown south of the tracks here. And you have the recreation facility in the center here in the light blue that would be for residents. You also have in the darker blue an oak grove that's an existing area of oak trees where walking trails and picnic tables would be added, as well as a dog park to the east of that. The project includes a new undercrossing of the railroad tracks, so that provides the access to the northern part of the site into Lost Canyon Road. And in this northern area where the open space would be, you have the emergency equestrian staging area that I mentioned. So this would be a dirt lot area with lodgepole fencing that could be opened or closed depending on the city's needs. You also have a standard use trailhead that would provide access to new trails that are on site and part of the project. And lastly, a firefighting helipod. So the helipod is a container that can be kept full or empty, and this is used as a water source for firefighting helicopters so they can either land or hover and fill up to return to a fire more quickly. This slide shows just an example of what the site planning here looks like. My keynote here would be that, as I mentioned, this looks more like a typical suburban subdivision that we see throughout much of the city. This slide shows the proposed architecture for the project. This architecture is consistent with the city's requirements for Canyon Country, and it includes 3 styles: adobe ranch, agrarian farmhouse, and Spanish hacienda. These would all be 1-story homes that are proposed here, but there would be a 2-story option available for the homes. You can see examples of that on the upper left here and on the bottom center image. I also want to touch on Live Oak Reservoir. So this is an existing facility maintained and owned by Santa Clarita Valley Water Agency to the south of the project site. You can see where it is in relation to the project site here. And what's on site today is an existing tank. And the project would build a new tank on an existing pad that's ready for a new reservoir to go in that holds 1 million gallons of water, as well as a new small building to go along with that. So that's to ensure sufficient water supply for the project. In terms of oak trees, there are 421 oak trees as part of the project area. This includes 355 trees that are protected under the city's oak tree regulations. And of those trees, 73 are of heritage size. The project would remove 16 protected oak trees, including 3 heritage trees, and would also remove 17 trees that are dead and not protected under city ordinance. The project also includes encroachments as shown here due to construction, and then would protect 250 trees, including 25 of the heritage, in place. I have an image here that's an example of oak tree impacts, so this is not the entirety of the site, it's just an example of one corner of the development, but it gives you a good idea of what these impacts can look like. So first you have the removal of a tree to accommodate building pads here. You also have 2 dead trees shown in blue that would be removed as part of the project. And then shown in yellow are trees that would have encroachments but would remain in place. So you can see here the encroachments include both the building pads but also the walking paths that go through the trees. And lastly, you have trees that would be preserved in place as part of the development as well. This slide shows you trails for the project site. There would be a 8-foot public trail constructed along the existing Lost Canyon Road, and a 12-foot public trail that connects along the new Lost Canyon Road to the project site under the railroad undercrossing. This trail would wrap around the east side of the site, as you can see here, and then go down the new J Street that the project would construct. And this allows for connections to a few different existing trails, Sand Canyon Road, as well as the Oak Spring Canyon Road Trail that connects out east, eventually heading towards Angeles National Forest, and lastly, the Robinson Ranch golf cart paths to the south. There are also 1.7 miles of private trails proposed as part of the project that residents could use. We're now going to zoom out and take a look at the area around the project as well to talk about access. So the project would be accessed via 2 different routes. First would be Lost Canyon Road. So this starts with a proposed roundabout that the project would be conditioned to build at Lost Canyon Road and Sand Canyon Road. From there, the project would improve the existing Lost Canyon Road up until where the road currently crosses Oak Spring Canyon Creek as an Arizona crossing. So the project would construct a new bridge at this location. From there, Lost Canyon Road would be extended to the railroad tracks, where the site would be accessed via that new railroad undercrossing that I mentioned. The second means of access is what's called J Street, which connects from the bottom side of the project site down through the Robinson Ranch property to Robinson Ranch Road, where it would provide a second connection out to Sand Canyon Road. As I mentioned, the project is gated. That's what the stars here show. So these gates are normally closed and wouldn't allow for through traffic, but in an emergency event, these gates could be opened, and this would provide a second means of access to get traffic from north to south in the canyon area if there was an emergency. With that, I'll invite Patrick de Guzman, Senior Traffic Engineer, up to talk more about our traffic for the project.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. Good evening, Chair Keith and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Patrick de Guzman. I'm a Senior Traffic Engineer with the city's Public Works Department. I will be providing a summary of the transportation assessment of the Belcaro project. The project's transportation assessment complies with the guidelines under the city's transportation analysis criteria and CEQA requirements. The assessment includes vehicle miles traveled analysis, which I will go over shortly, followed by a summary of the project's roadway improvements. The local transportation assessment is included to comply with the city's guidelines for studying a project's effects on the transportation system. This includes an evaluation of the existing conditions, traffic generated by the project, how that traffic is distributed onto the city's roadway system, and the resulting future roadway conditions evaluated with a future year of 2032. The project's proposed 341 dwelling units is calculated to generate 1,596 daily trips. The project's trips are distributed with 95% of the project traffic using the north entrance towards the Lost Canyon Road, Sand Canyon Road intersection, and 5% of the project traffic using the south connection towards Robinson Ranch Road. The draft environmental impact report is posted, including the transportation assessment, and is available for your review. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about vehicle miles traveled. Under Senate Bill 743, CEQA evaluates transportation impacts using vehicle miles traveled, or VMT. For residential projects, a project is considered less than significant if it's at least 15% below the citywide average. The citywide average is 22.7 miles per resident. Therefore, 15% below, as shown on the screen, results in the city's significance threshold of 19.3 miles per resident. As Andy mentioned, the project consists of age-restricted senior housing, and the transportation assessment evaluates the travel characteristics associated with senior housing, which typically generates fewer and shorter vehicle trips than conventional residential development. Based on accepted travel characteristics, the project is estimated to generate approximately 18.2 home-based VMT per resident, which is below the city's threshold of the 19.3 home-based VMT. Therefore, the project's transportation impact under CEQA is considered less than significant. In addition to the analysis for transportation assessment, the project will be conditioned to construct the following off-site roadway improvements. Circled in blue is a roundabout at Sand Canyon Road and Lost Canyon Road, and this will include a southbound bypass lane as you approach the roundabout to accommodate school vehicle queues experienced during peak periods, and a second lane as you approach the roundabout, allowing southbound through traffic to continue. And this is a single lane roundabout, just to clarify. In purple is striping improvements on Sand Canyon Road, north of Lost Canyon Road. Included in this design, the striping improvements, there's an extension of the southbound right turn lane and a through lane from the State Route 14 exit to the approach of the Lost Canyon Road to also support school vehicle queuing and the continuous flow of southbound through traffic. In brown, the street improvements along Lost Canyon Road east of Sand Canyon Road, as Andy mentioned in a previous slide, include an 8-foot multi-use trail, which will eliminate existing on-street parking on the north side, but provide connection to existing trail facilities pursuant to the city's master plan of trails. In green, striping improvements on Lost Canyon Road, west of Sand Canyon Road, includes striping of a second westbound lane to La Vida to allow both queuing of school vehicles and westbound through traffic to continue on to the Vista Canyon. These improvements benefit both project traffic and the existing issues experienced by the surrounding area's transportation network. Finally, I'd like to note the intersection of Lost Canyon Road and Sand Canyon Road. The figure on the right shows the proposed layout of the roundabout at Sand Canyon Road and Lost Canyon Road. As mentioned on the previous slide, a southbound bypass lane is included to accommodate existing peak school vehicle queuing that's experienced. As discussed, although CEQA evaluates transportation impacts using vehicle miles traveled, the city continues to evaluate level of service as part of the local transportation assessment review. The transportation assessment evaluated Lost Canyon Road and Sand Canyon Road intersection level of service conditions with the project, including existing always stop control, a traffic signal at the intersection, and the condition roundabout at the intersection. To briefly summarize level of service or LOS-A at an intersection indicates free-flowing traffic with minimal to no delays, while LOS-F denotes gridlock, bumper-to-bumper, or severe delay. Therefore, lower delay will mean shorter queues. The existing always stop condition operates at a level of service C with up to 24 seconds delay with the project traffic. A signal would improve operations at the intersection to a level of service B with up to 14 seconds delay with the project traffic. And the roundabout resulted in the optimal service operating at level of service A with up to 8 seconds delay with the project traffic. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I'll be available for questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, so that wraps up our discussion of the project proposal. Next, I want to touch on the entitlements for the proposed project. So the applicant is seeking approval for the entitlements that you see on the screen here. And the first 4 of these are the reasons that this project requires Planning Commission approval. You have the vesting tentative map for subdivision, conditional use permit for gating of the project, as well as development in the PD overlay, hillside development review due to the cross slope on site, and then oak tree permit for those oak tree removals that we discussed. The project also requires development review for site plan and layout design, and architectural design review for the architecture of the proposed homes. Lastly, of course, you have the environmental impact report on here as well. One permit that you'll note is not on this slide, as I mentioned before, is the ridgeline alteration permit. So because the applicant has included this as one of their waivers under density bonus law, the project isn't subject to the ridgeline alteration permit, and as such, this is a Planning Commission decision, not a City Council decision. With that, we'll turn our discussion to the environmental review for the project to provide an overview of the EIR. So this project is considered a project under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, and was required to undergo the Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, review process. The city conducted a competitive bid process and selected SWCA Environmental Consultants as the consultant for this project. The City Council awarded the contract to SWCA in March of 2025, and we kicked off the environmental process in June of last year by publishing the notice of preparation and holding a scoping meeting in early July over at the center. Key concerns that were raised during the scoping process from the public included wildfire and evacuation, traffic impacts and congestion, public trails, and project density. The notice of availability for the EIR was released actually today on July 7th, and this kicks off a 45-day review period that will end on August 21st. So because the EIR has just been released today, our goal this evening is to provide an introduction to the analysis and the findings of the draft EIR as the review period begins. Once the draft EIR review period is completed, the city and SWCA will prepare the formal responses to comments and the other components of the final EIR, which will ultimately come back to the Planning Commission for consideration as part of the project. This slide shows all of the impact areas that CEQA studies in an EIR. So there are 20 categories as shown on this screen. So under CEQA, if there are potentially significant impacts for any of these resource areas, mitigation measures need to be considered. For this project, for all of the resource areas that have potential for significant impacts, those impacts can be mitigated to levels of less than significant, so the project would not have any significant and unavoidable impacts. The areas that you see here on the screen highlighted in bold are the ones that I'll touch on as we go over the project here. But there's a comprehensive summary of all of these in your agenda report, and of course the draft EIR itself is available for all of these sections as well. So first off, we will talk about air quality. So air quality for operations of the project would have less than significant impacts, but there is a potential during construction for exposure to substantial pollutant concentrations, specifically diesel particulate emissions. As a result, a mitigation measure would be imposed to require the use of Tier 4 diesel engines for the project. These engines have advanced emission control technology, and implementing this mitigation measure would reduce the emissions to below the significance threshold. Similarly, greenhouse gas emissions would be less than significant for project operations. However, the California Air Resources Board has a published scoping plan that requires development to be all-electric. As such, the project is proposed as an all-electric development. These greenhouse gas mitigation measures would enforce that through the prohibition on wood burning and gas burning fireplaces, so requiring fireplaces to be all electric, and would also require an all electric development. So this includes appliances, HVAC, and so forth. With that, mitigation measures would be, impacts would be less than significant. The next area we'll look at is biological resources. And you'll note that this is where we see the most mitigation measures for the project. So biological resources looks at several different topics, such as protected species, riparian habitat, sensitive natural communities, and wildlife corridors. So the first dozen mitigation measures that you see here fall into a few different categories. First, there's a measure specific to the Crotch's bumblebee species. There are general mitigation measures that deal with monitoring, worker training, and construction boundary marking to ensure that construction doesn't go outside those boundaries. There are measures related to on-site conservation, habitat mitigation, and off-site mitigation. Measures related to wildlife relocation and avoidance of nesting birds. And lastly, measures that would incorporate appropriate landscaping, protect against invasive species, and include requirements in project CCNRs to protect biological resources. As you can see, the last measure here on the screen is specific to wetlands. This requires mitigation for a little over 3.5 acres of direct impacts to jurisdictional waters through off-site mitigation bank credits or projects. Next, we have cultural resources. The draft EIR evaluated 4 historic era resources on the site and determined that none of them met the significance criteria under CEQA. There are no known archaeological resources on site, but there's moderate potential for inadvertent discovery of resources, so unknown resources or human remains, so this mitigation measure would cover that if anything is uncovered during construction. Similarly, there are no known resources on site for tribal cultural resources. However, there is potential to find unknown resources on site. The city consulted with the local tribe, the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, through the AB 52 consultation process. And through that process, we are including these mitigation measures in the EIR. So these include measures dealing with full-time monitoring and disposition and dealing with anything that is discovered that's not previously known. In terms of noise, again, operational impacts would be less than significant for noise, but construction impacts would have the potential for significance, so these mitigation measures would be imposed. First are measures to reduce construction noise, so things like equipment muffling and limited hours, and this is in particular during paving for the road work that's being done on Lost Canyon Road. This includes also measures like locating equipment as far away as possible from sensitive receptors and limiting work within 10 feet of receptors to 1 hour a day. Construction would also be scheduled to try to avoid overlap between multiple sources of noise at the same time. And again, putting equipment as far away as possible, reducing idling, and turning off equipment when possible. For geology and soils, there is a moderate potential to a high potential on site for liquefaction. This first mitigation measure would require that the project implement all the recommendations in the project's geotechnical report, which would help to mitigate those impacts due to liquefaction. As with cultural resources, there's no known paleontological resources on site, but this mitigation measure for paleontological resources would cover what to do in the case that anything is found on site. For hazards and hazardous materials, there is potential for exposure to hazardous soils due to the prior and existing railroad right-of-ways running through the site. The Phase 2 report found that there was some arsenic adjacent to those sites, so the remedial action plan would deal with proper disposal of that soil. In addition, a soil management plan would be required to handle any previously unidentified soil on site that needs that special handling. So again, these mitigations would bring these potential impacts to less than significant. The last 2 areas I'd like to talk about from the draft EIR are areas where we do not have potential for significant impacts. The draft EIR concluded that there was less than significant impacts under CEQA for traffic and for wildfire. However, these are items that came up as key concerns during the scoping process for the project, so we do want to make sure we touch on them this evening. First, as noted in the agenda report and as Patrick discussed, CEQA does not consider level of service in terms of project impacts. It looks at vehicle miles traveled. In addition, the project would not conflict with the city's circulation plan or other traffic programs like the non-motorized transportation plan, and the project would not increase roadway hazards. The project's traffic report does look at emergency evacuation and determine that there would be adequate evacuation routes as required by the city's safety element. However, outside of the EIR, as we've discussed, the city's traffic engineering division has conducted a detailed review of the project's traffic report, and the project would be conditioned to build the traffic improvements we've been talking about this evening. In terms of wildfire, similarly, CEQA looks at whether a project would substantially impair the emergency response plan or evacuation plan if the project exacerbates wildfire risk, spread, or pollutants, or if it exposes people to things that occur post-fire, like downstream flooding or landslides. So from a CEQA perspective, impacts related to wildfire are less than significant and mitigation is not required. I'll also note that the project does have sufficient water supplies. As we discussed, it would have those improvements at Live Oak Reservoir as required by the water agency. And the project also includes the proposed helipod for firefighting purposes. And the applicant has prepared a fire protection plan that has 10 project design features that includes things like planning construction with the fire department, management of vegetation during construction, and more to help deal with fire risk. So as evaluated in the draft EIR, the project site would be less likely to burn due to current building standards and required fuel modification zones that would be implemented as part of the project. And the project would also create the emergency staging area and helipod, but this is counterbalanced by an increase to evacuation times with the implementation of the project. All right. So lastly, for the draft EIR, CEQA requires that the EIR look at alternatives to the proposed project and to compare the impacts. And the intent of the alternatives analysis is to determine if there are significant impacts that can be reduced through different project alternatives. The first alternative that is looked at in the EIR is considered in every EIR, and that's the no project, no build alternative. So the project would not be built. However, this does not mean that development couldn't occur in the future with some different project that would have its own environmental review. Alternative 2 is the reduced development alternative. And the intent of this development alternative would be to avoid sensitive habitat. So there would be a smaller project footprint to have less impact on sensitive habitats on site. This alternative would include the same number of units, 341, but it would have less vegetation impact and provide more open space. This would actually result in 15 more oak tree takes because the development would not be planned around oak trees. It would take those trees to be concentrated. And would increase density. So this would likely result in smaller lots, more like 3,000 square foot lots, as well as likely taller units on the property. The third alternative considered is an existing zoning project. So this looks at the NU5 zoning and UR1 zoning and would develop lots that would meet those standards. So these are more of estate lots like you would see with that type of development. This project would meet lot sizes for that and would result in about 109 dwelling units based on their need to meet those lot sizes on site. It would decrease open space on the property by about 38 acres. 3 units would be located north of the railroad tracks. There would be more impacts to the creek and to the oak grove because the development would be spread over a greater area. And there would not be an emergency staging area or a trailhead. The fourth alternative considered in the EIR is a full state density bonus project. So this project, as we discussed, is a 20% density bonus request because it's an age-restricted development. However, state density bonus law allows for an applicant to request up to a 100% density bonus if they're providing very low income and moderate income units on a project. So this would be a 568 unit project that could theoretically be done under density bonus law. This would again result in smaller lots on the project site, a similar development footprint, taller units, and no recreation center. All noticing required by law has been completed for the project. Signs have been posted on site. There was a notice published in the Signal, and mailers have been sent out to everyone within 1,000 feet of the project site. In addition, we've sent out an email notification to everyone on the project interest list, which people can always join if they wish to. Just contact me and we can add you. And we've received 7 public comments to date, 1 in support of the project from the Chamber of Commerce and 6 from individuals opposed to the project. The applicant has also done some outreach of their own. They held an open house last fall. They can touch on that in their presentation. And with that, I'd like to talk about our proposed meeting schedule for the project. So as a reminder, we held the site tour for this project as a study session back in January. We did the virtual site tour here. And we're here tonight for the first public hearing. And as I mentioned, our goal tonight, again, is to take as many questions as we can, answer those questions, and to bring back anything we need to the next meeting for you. We're proposing that next public meeting would be on August 18th, where we would respond to those comments. And just as a reminder, the EIR review period closes August 21st, so the end of that same week. This would bring us coming back tentatively on November 17th for a third meeting to consider the project and make a decision, including the certification of the final EIR. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission take testimony from the applicant, including their presentation, and the public, direct staff on the hearing schedule, identify any matters of project concern for staff to look at further with the applicant, and then continue the public hearing to August 18th. That concludes my presentation. I am available for any questions. We also have several city staff here from traffic, engineering, and oak trees to answer questions you may have. SWCA has their representative here for CEQA-specific questions, and the applicant, Corey Harpole, and his team are available to answer your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Before we open up public comment portion, are there any questions for staff?
Yeah.
All right, we'll start with you, Tim.
A couple things. As you stated, the EIR, we're playing with each other here on the buttons. You stated the EIR was just made available to us today, so a very brief overview of it by myself, and I really focused primarily on traffic and evacuation wildfire, which are my 2 biggest concerns with anything that goes on in Sand Canyon. So the first thing I noted was that the The traffic improvements mentioned a dependence on the Vista Canyon developer participating, completing what they were required to do in order to have this built out the way it's ultimately considered. I'm a bit uncomfortable relying on Vista Canyon, given the troubles that they've had over the last few years, and I'd like to understand better what the scope of Vista Canyon's work left to do is. If it's minor, I don't care, but if it's, adding lanes and doing a bunch of, and I have no idea what the scope of those improvements are, so I'd like to get some understanding of that at some point. On the freeway off-ramp study, where everything kind of fell in within the numbers where they should, it wasn't clear to me if the traffic was only the project traffic, or did it consider other traffic growth that may be related to the project, perhaps in the terms of people finding alternate routes or using different ways to connect into the canyon. Seems like a simple question for traffic to answer. The evacuation plan in the traffic portion was very, very thin in terms of details and things that were considered. Again, I haven't gone through the whole report to see if it's addressed in more depth somewhere else. But at our next meeting, I would like to have a much more robust discussion of the things that were considered into the plan, not necessarily the mechanics of who shuts down what road and who directs traffic, but in terms of the anticipated flows, both if we were evacuating to the north and to the south. That has been a big hang-up on projects before. And the last one I have, again, might be a real simple thing, but in the alternative projects, alternative 3, which is the existing zoning project, is that even possible under state law?
An existing zoning project, the existing zoning project is certainly possible under state law. It would just require a developer who's looking to build that type of project.
Okay, I guess where I'm coming from is if we decided that we wanted to do alternative 3, and that was the acceptable thing to this commission, would that be challengeable under state law with all the numerous things that seem to be coming down day after day after day, taking away our responsibilities?
So in terms of legal defensibility, I would defer to the city attorney to answer that portion of the
I
question.
knew you would.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, perhaps I can get clarification on what exactly you're asking. Defensible from the standpoint of, it's not something that the Planning Commission could necessarily impose upon the developer. The developer would have to propose to build that alternative 3. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding what the question is exactly.
Well, you're getting to where I'm going.
Okay.
The question that I want to have. So when we see these alternatives and when the public sees these alternatives, they're often understood to be, well, why didn't you make them do alternative 3, or why did you let them do that?
And if indeed that's the path you're going down, that is an alternative for purposes of environmental review and for preference for the city. But of course, it is private property. The developer would have to agree to build that project. It's not something that the city could impose upon the project for it to be built. So from the standpoint of it being challenged, my suspicion, without knowing, and I don't want to put words in the developer's or the applicant's mouth, would be it's unlikely, I think, that the developer would be willing to build that project. And certainly if that was something that the city were trying to impose, I think it would be challenged from the standpoint of that imposition. So the developer certainly would probably be first in line to challenge that imposition by either the Planning Commission or the City Council if it were appealed to the City Council position.
That's exactly what I was looking for. Thank you. That's it for me.
Okay.
I have some
Go ahead.
questions.
Of course.
I know prior projects in this area fell apart because of the Metrolink issues, and how is this one going with Metrolink? I know before, I think we were crossing the railroad instead of going under.
So, Commissioner, the applicant has been coordinating with Metro, who owns the tracks, Metrolink, who operates here, and then also the California Public Utilities Commission, who regulates railroad crossings. So all three at this stage have indicated that the proposed undercrossing is feasible. So they will need to continue doing engineering work with those agencies, get any encroachment permits and so forth that are required. But those agencies are aware and have indicated that it is feasible to build this.
Okay, and then, like what Tim was saying, fire safety, traffic, those are all my hot buttons in this area as well. I barely looked at the EIR today. I mean, we got it at, I think, 12:30 today, and I opened up one little section, which was fire. Fire safety and evacuation routes, they should consider bridge or undercrossing closures and railroad derailments. I mean, we hear the horror stories. There's a lot of people from Sand Canyon that we've heard for all these other projects, and it's really important that we make sure that if we add all these houses, that we don't make it worse. And it just sounded horrible the last time there were fires there. What triggers the construction of the roundabout at Sand Canyon and Lost Canyon? Again, that's always been kind of a gray area when any of these projects come up. I think I heard it from traffic, school safety, traffic impacts. For that, it looks like they considered that for school, because I know in the past that's always been a problem too with the double schools there. So I just want to make sure that we really see how that's all working. I didn't really understand the driving through because I can't visualize it on this little map. It looks like we're building in a liquefaction zone. What kind of protections will be given to the property owners? What was the other project we just heard? And we talked, a bunch of owners had a lot of problems on the property. It's just the last one we just heard, right before we just heard about that. It says the flood zone, building a flood zone only given a 1% chance of annual flooding with all the current erosion in the area by Oak Spring Canyon Creek. I'd like to hear a little more about that and what that's doing, the FEMA flood map revision, all of that. It was a little confusing for me. I think that's it. I did say that the back side of the homes look very plain, but I don't think we have a lot of control over that. But I did see that in the small pictures we have. But I think that's it for now.
Vice Chair Fana or Commissioner Werner?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple of questions. I do want to get some more information on the traffic assessment when the study was done, and also, which also Commissioner Eichmann brought up, is what triggers. I want to know if the roundabout and the road improvements are being done prior to construction, simultaneously with construction, or is it something that's going to be in the future? I don't want to see the roundabout done at a later date than the homes are constructed, so I'd like some more information about completion of the roadway improvements. And then with the fire, I would like to see more information on the evacuation plans. I saw, again, we got the draft EIR pretty late, so didn't get a chance to review it. But I did see in one section sort of a map of how the evacuation would take place, but it was just one little map. So I'd like to see some more information on the wildfire evacuation plans for that. And then I don't know if we have the fire captain who can attend a meeting and speak to that and get some more information on the evacuation plans and what their thoughts are on that, maybe at the next meeting. And that's all I have for right now.
Dan?
A couple questions. Would you typically, Andy, or for city staff, have an actual hearing where a 7,114-page draft EIR was issued the day of the hearing? Is that normal?
So, Commissioner Fana, we recognize the EIR was released just today. One of our goals this evening was just to provide that initial overview. The next public hearing would still be during the review period for the EIR.
Okay.
So provide that second hearing where we can answer additional questions before that closes.
So then my next question, would you typically have 2 hearings during the public comment period on a draft EIR? Is that normal protocol?
It can be 1 or 2, depending. There's not necessarily a requirement under CEQA to have those hearings in that time frame. That being said, we do have the 2 scheduled for this project.
Okay. And I know the applicant hasn't presented yet, but
I'd be interested to know how they feel about having multiple meetings before we're kind of in a position to do anything. It seems like maybe we could have had a little more time. I'm glad you guys got to look at it. I really just counted the pages, 7,114, if you include the 3,900-page soils and geology report. So I look forward to reading it, but I'm just, a little surprised. I'm looking forward to public comment and I guess learning more about the project. I would be interested, this will be another thing, I guess maybe I'll wait for the applicant to present, but in the, really just from the presentation, the greenhouse gas emissions, it really was, I believe, presented tonight that having gas could create an issue. I'd really like to know if it's the developer that's proposing and the project is all electric or not, and if that's something that could be reviewed. Honestly, I don't know. Build homes for a living, and people losing gas has not been super popular in our business. So something I would like to learn more about, if that was kind of a mandate. Hey, let's not even go there because it's California and where we're at today with the mandates, and how it could be something that has to be otherwise mitigated. But I'd be interested to hear how the developer feels about it, because I don't think we should have gas taken away everywhere unless it's the only option. You can't mitigate whatever it creates. So I'd like to hear more about that. And I'll look forward, y'all covered all the other hot topics, so I'm just trying to think of things that are not repetitive. Okay, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Before I open public comment, I echo what Commissioner Fana, Vice Chair Fana said, and others. I did not have time to look at the EIR, and I understand that was maybe not the intent. But many of my questions that I may have are going to come very similar with Commissioner Burkhart. Why is this not more detailed in here? And I fear that that will happen at the second hearing, and we still have another hearing to go, and we're running out of hearings based on state law. And so I'm going to look very hard at this proposed schedule when we get to the end of the night. And for those who are speaking, and there seems to be a lot tonight, I would encourage you to read the EIR, because many of the questions and concerns you may have are probably answered in the EIR. And that doesn't mean you still don't want to speak, and you will still have your opinion, and that is allowed, and we welcome that, and we look forward to it. But for example, I would love to know what the fire protection plan says. I just didn't get a chance to read it. And so I encourage you to do that, and I know we will hear from the applicant, but that will also lead to more questions. And so we, maybe as commissioners, we can review the schedule at the end and turn it over to public comment now. But I do encourage everyone to read the EIR, despite it being 7,000 pages, because you might find a lot of information in there that you haven't read up to this point that was just released today. So with that, Kelly, do we have any speakers? I will open it this time. Which one? These are just written. To be read? Or just at the end? Perfect. Just a few. At this time, I will open the public hearing and begin public comment portion. I will begin by calling up the applicant, and they will be provided 15 minutes for their presentation. Mr. Musella.
Set. Andy? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, good evening, Chair Keith and members of the commission. My name is John Musella. I'm here representing the applicant, New Urban West, for the Belcaro Sand Canyon project. With me here tonight from New Urban West is Adam Browning, President, and Corey Harpel, Senior Vice President, as well as several project experts covering traffic and fire safety, because we know those are key issues. I'd like to begin by thanking city staff for their diligent work on the project over the last 2 years and getting us to this point tonight. Our goal tonight is simple: walk you through what this project is, the benefits it brings to Sand Canyon, and how it directly addresses the questions we've heard from the community, particularly on fire safety, evacuation, and traffic. New Urban West is a privately held developer with more than 60 years of experience in Southern California, including developing and building Belcarro Valencia, a senior community that for more than 20 years has commanded some of the strongest resale demand in the valley. In addition, New Urban West has also entitled Metro Walk, located adjacent to Vista Canyon. Of the approximately 194 gross acres, just 81 will be utilized for residential. Open space is the single largest use on the site at a little over 108 acres. For the design, we followed two guiding principles. First, the preservation of oak trees on site and the accommodation of appropriate fuel modification zones around the property. The plan saves 95% of the regulated oak trees and creates a 200-foot buffer along the development edges for fuel modification. Second, we clustered the homes at the center, which both creates a substantial buffer from existing homes in the canyon and gives our own residents a greater sense of community and connectivity. There are two gated entries, a new bridge over Oak Springs Creek, a new railroad undercrossing, and a new roadway connection from Oak Springs Canyon Road south to Robinson Ranch Road that improve how people in emergency vehicles move in and out of Sand Canyon, which is exactly where the traffic and evacuation conversation will pick up later. Now let's take a look at Belcarro itself and the broader public benefits. As you know, this is a plan to be a senior living community for those who want to stay near family or downsize without leaving Sand Canyon. The highlights of our project benefits are 55% dedicated open space, 4.3 miles of new multipurpose trails, 2 miles of new roads, including a new bridge and roundabout at the Sand Canyon Lost Canyon, an LA County Fire helipod, 1 million gallon water tank, which doubles low capacity, and a 3-acre recreation center for active adults. Everything we'll show you tonight ladders up to both fostering an active, healthy lifestyle community for seniors adjacent to a golf course, while also enhancing emergency access and public safety for the canyon. Before we continue, I want to note that because this is a senior community, this is a lower intensity use than standard single-family home housing, which translates to fewer peak hour car trips and no new students for schools. This single decision choice quietly answers a lot of the impact questions, as an age-restricted communities generally have fewer local impacts across the board. We see the preservation of open space of half the site as a key point, with 4.3 miles of private and public trails going through the open space. Importantly, these trails connect outward, tying to existing Sand Canyon Road and Oak Springs Canyon trails with a trailhead and parking. At the center of the project sits a 3-acre recreation, one more please, thank you, recreation center around active, healthy living with pools and cabanas, pickleball and bocce ball, a quarter-mile fitness loop, gardens, an outdoor kitchen, hobby rooms and dog park, and shaded oak grove seating. Part of the rec center design goal was to make it a walkable destination that gives residents reasons to be outside and connected to their neighbors. That's the lifestyle part of the story. Now I'd like to turn it over to questions we know are on the community's mind that were at the core of our design process for Belcarro. We've spent real time listening to Sand Canyon residents and made refinements to the project, not just in the city's 2 public hearings thus far, but as an open house we hosted in the fall, and in meetings twice with Sand Canyon HOA, as well as with the Robinson Ranch HOA and individual residents. As a result of this community engagement, we made improvements to the plan, including relocating the dog park and pickleball courts away from existing residences, adding a dedicated emergency staging area, adding an LA County Fire helipod, and adjusting Lost Canyon Road improvements to minimize most of the neighbor right-of-way encroachment issues along Lost Canyon. Now, there are 2 issues that rise above the rest: fire safety and traffic and emergency evacuation. We know these are important issues, and we built the answers into the project design from the beginning. We've asked the experts who designed those answers to walk us through them directly with you. So first, on traffic, I'm going to hand it over to Sean Moan with Gibson Transportation.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Sean Moan. I'm a principal with Gibson Transportation Consulting, and we prepared the transportation assessment for the project in close consultation. Sorry, in close consultation with both city staff and fire safety experts. The transportation assessment, as you heard earlier, was found to be consistent with both CEQA and local traffic guidelines. And I'd like to discuss a few of the key findings of that assessment. First, it's important to frame what kind of project this is from a traffic standpoint. As an age-restricted development, it generates far fewer trips, work-related trips and school trips than, which are both significant contributors to peak hour congestion than typical residential developments. As a result, the traffic footprint is far lower than what you might expect when you hear 341 homes. Second, as previously discussed, the project meaningfully improves some of the transportation infrastructure for the broader Canyon community. It paves Lost Canyon Road with road curbs to fit the canyon context. It also constructs a bridge over Oak Springs Creek and a new paved road, J Street, connecting Oak Springs Canyon Road to the Robinson Ranch Road, thereby adding access to the project itself. And third, and perhaps most importantly, based on what we've heard tonight, the project would upgrade the key intersection of Sand Canyon and Lost Canyon via the implementation of a roundabout. Roundabouts typically are far more efficient, provide higher throughput, resulting in significant reductions in delays in queuing when compared to a stop-controlled intersection. As previously discussed, the results of that roundabout would significantly improve the level of service at that intersection from LOSC to LSA. The implementation of the roundabout would also significantly improve the safety when you consider emergency access and evacuation. The emergency access analysis, with the details of which are contained in an appendix to the transportation assessment, evaluated both the worst case scenario, which is a simultaneous uncontrolled evacuation event, and a phased scenario, which is a controlled and managed by zone operation. The results of the future with project conditions, which necessitate, based on the currently shared implementation of the roundabout, we had to assume the baseline. So you do see a slight degradation in evacuation times with the project in place under future conditions. Without that roundabout in place, the evacuation times would be significantly worse. When you look at the phased evacuation times with the project in place, they represent basically a 1 to 2 minute increase, and this is detailed in both the transportation assessment and in the agenda staff report. In summary, this, compared to other residential developments, is a low trip generating project. It's paired with improvements that benefit the community from an operational and safety standpoint, and really puts an emphasis on enhanced access, emergency response, and evacuation connectivity for the larger Canyon area. I would now like to introduce Doug Nichols from DUDEC to discuss emergency access and fire safety in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Keith and fellow commissioners. Doug Nichols with DUDEC, retired fire marshal with the Glendale Fire Department with 30 years experience in fire prevention, and also served as a planning commissioner with the City of Thousand Oaks, so I have compassion and appreciation for your service, especially when reading a 7,000-page technical document on short notice. This project will be built to and beyond the LA County Fire Department standards, but I wanted to highlight 2 areas of fire protection that are significant for this project. The first is the protection around the perimeter of the project, primarily because of the fuel modification zones that have been built in. There will be up to 200 feet of fuel modification following the requirements, with a 5-foot zone 0, non-combustible, 30 feet of irrigated landscaping, and then up to 100 feet as well with some additional landscaping and fuel modification, and up to 200 feet, which would include some thinned vegetation management as well. And where the maximum could not be met, then there would be a heat deflecting wall, and particularly around the southwest boundary to help deflect any heat from an approaching wildfire. And then along the north, as you've seen in some of the exhibits, the railroad right-of-way would actually serve, in essence, as an off-site equivalent fuel modification zone, since there's no combustible material within that right-of-way. Also, the homeowners association will be maintaining the landscape throughout the project, the entire development. The fuel modification zone will be inspected on an annual basis and maintained annually as required as well. And then there'll be some defensible space advantages as well around the perimeter, which would provide the space necessary for firefighting operations and also reduce the potential for flame impingement. And then secondly, I go to the next slide, please. With hardening of structures, and you'll be able to read more about this in the fire protection plan when you get a chance to look at that. The project will comply with the Wildland Urban Interface Code requirements for ember-resistant construction and also ignition-resistant materials in every home, including the roofing assembly. We have an exhibit there which shows some of that. Ember-resistant vents, enclosed hardened eaves, non-combustible exterior siding, dual pane windows with one pane tempered glass. And as with all new structures, every building in this property will have automatic fire sprinkler systems. And lastly, we'll have a construction fire protection plan as well, and also a wildfire education plan for the residents. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Tom Ewald to talk more about the fire protection features.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tom Ewald, and I work for Manette, Phillips & Phillips. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant. I'm a retired LA County Fire Department Deputy Fire Chief with over 33 years of service. My final assignment was actually down the street here as the North Region Deputy serving the Santa Clarita Valley and the North Region of Los Angeles County. I want to talk to you tonight about Belcaro and the fire suppression solutions that are part of this infrastructure. Belcaro brings two pieces of fire suppression infrastructure to Sand Canyon that don't currently exist today. The one is the 1 million gallon water tank that was discussed earlier. Obviously, it's designed to meet the fire flow requirements of this development and within state and fire code requirements. But it also provides water storage and capacity for first responders operating anywhere in this end of the valley. Second is the helipod that was previously mentioned as well. This is a permanent on-site helicopter reload site, and it's designed to cut firefighting cycle times down and ensure that aircraft are able to refuel and redeploy quickly when fires occur anywhere within the region. I'd also like to address the evacuation concerns directly. Evacuations today are fundamentally different than they were conducted during the Sand Fire most recently 10 years ago. Today, evacuations are done in a phased process managed by real-time unified command decision-making, and the widespread simultaneous evacuations that have been seen in the past are generally no longer done. This protocol change, coupled with Belcaro's roadway infrastructure improvements and the improved primary and secondary means of evacuation, greatly add to the potential for improved evacuation for citizens in the development and for also the community at large. In addition to the evacuation staging areas, are going to be provided, and a safe refuge area for the project at the entrance is there to support unified command during firefighting operations. I want to click over to one more slide. Let's see here. Back. I'll go into the quote. But with this, I'll go ahead and kick it back over to John for his conclusion.
So, in conclusion, Belcaro delivers needed senior housing. It gives residents who living in Sand Canyon a place to downsize without leaving the canyon, and it lets families here keep parents close and grandparents close by. We're grateful to the Commission for its time and for the community's engagement, which made this a stronger project. We're here to answer any questions for you, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. All right, we are going to move on to public speakers, and the first three speakers are Barbara Myler, Jim Bazell, and Mitchell Van Beckham.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Can.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Barbara Myler. I'm a 30-plus year resident of Santa Clarita and have seen our community grow and grow in the right way. I want to talk specifically about senior housing tonight and about proof, because we don't have to imagine how this turns out. We can go look at it. The The reality, whether we're happy about it or not, is that we're all aging, and our longtime residents are facing a hard choice. When the family home gets to be too much, where do you go? Right now, too often the answer is you leave. You move away from your kids, your grandkids, your doctors, your church, the whole life that you've built here. That's not a choice anyone should have to make for lack of options. Belcaro answers that. It's a purpose-built senior community for those who want to downsize without leaving the community that they love. And here's the part that gives me confidence. The developer has already done this right here in Santa Clarita. Belcaro in Valencia is a senior community that they built more than 20 years ago, and 2 decades later, it still commands some of the strongest resale demand in the valley. That's not a promise on paper. That's a finished neighborhood you can drive through today that has held its value and its quality for a generation. When a builder has a track record like that in our own backyard, we should take it seriously. Belcaro San Canyon lets our seniors age in place in this valley near the people who love them. I strongly support this project, and I urge the commission to support it as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Keith and Commissioners. My name is Jim Bazell, and I am a resident of Sand Canyon for over 10 years. The proposed development of 341 age-restricted single-family senior homes, which is a positive thing, in my opinion, for Sand Canyon. There are a couple of things that this community will bring to Sand Canyon, which I think is important. One, the roundabout, which is needed. Two, the new connection with the Lost Canyon Road to Vista Canyon Road and to the newly open bridge from Vista Canyon Ranch to Soledad. The new trail connectivities to existing trails in Sand Canyon. And since this is a senior community, it's going to create less traffic than a newer development, whereas one of the slides showed how many units can be built. Back in 2016, I was part of, not a part, but I was involved in the Sand Canyon fire. I had to evacuate. It was chaos getting out. And what it brought was frustration to many of the homeowners. It took more than 20 minutes just to get out to the four-way stop sign on Sand Canyon. This project will bring a real secondary entry link from the Robinson's Ranch community and Crystal Springs community, which will open up another access point to get out. Since Vista Canyon Ranch actually was the responsible developer to build the roundabout on Lost Canyon and Sand Canyon, and for whatever reason, developments get put on hold. Developers stop their project for stuff that maybe they controlled or couldn't control, excuse me. But as this project moves through, I'm in favor of this project, but I do request one thing, because I do not want to see history repeat itself where a project is conditioned and they, oops.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Keith and Commissioners. My name is Mitchell Van Beckham, and I'm here on behalf of the Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce, which represents businesses across our region. The Chamber supports Belcaro at Sand Canyon, and I want to explain why in practical terms. Our organization backs projects that strengthen the long-term economic vitality of this valley, expand housing options for local residents, and deliver real community benefits. Belcaro does all three. Housing is economic infrastructure. When we don't have the right homes, our workforce can't stay and our employers can't grow. Belcaro adds 341 senior homes for residents 55 and older, a segment our valley is badly short on, given the increasing number of people in Santa Clarita that are over 55 and support our local restaurants and retail shops. Meeting that demand is part of what keeps this region economically healthy. And it's an important segment of housing the Chamber believes needs to be expanded to meet the local demand. This is also a lower impact use than conventional housing. A senior community means no new students, fewer peak hour trips, and a lighter footprint on services, all while still generating construction activity and local spending during and after build-out. The Chamber's letter of support is already in your record. We reviewed this as a serious, well-planned project, and we trust the city's environmental process to secure the right mitigations. We respectfully encourage the Commission's continued consideration and approval. Thank you.
Thank you. The next three speakers are Holly Hanlon, Di Thompson, and Daniel Rodriguez.
Good evening, Chair Keith and Commissioners. My name is Holly Hanlon, a local realtor and a proud Santa Clarita Valley resident for over 26 years. I'm here tonight in support of Belcaro at Sand Canyon. I want to talk about something I see in my everyday business. The housing supply is stuck and has been for years. Belcaro is exactly the kind of project that gets it moving again. I've been helping families buy and sell homes since 1980. One thing I've learned is that people don't move just because they want a different house. They move because life changes. Our housing market works best when people have options at every stage of life. Here's the reality. Empty nest baby boomers like me now own 28% of the larger 3-bedroom plus homes in this country. Millennials raising children only own 16%, nearly half as many. Our older residents are staying put. A 2025 survey found 61% of baby boomer homeowners say they never plan to sell. That's not because they don't want to move, it's because there's nowhere enticing for them to go. When we don't build homes designed for seniors, our longtime residents stay in houses that no longer fit them, and the young families who need those homes can't get in. Belcaro breaks that logjam. It's 341 single-family homes built for residents 55 and older, gives our seniors a place they actually want to move to, and every time one of them does, an existing family home opens up for the next generation. You free up supply by creating supply, aimed squarely at the fastest growing demographic we have. And the economics are just as strong. Belcaro means construction jobs, local spending, and steady, engaged residents who shop and dine right here in Santa Clarita. Add 55% dedicated, and you add the 55% dedicated open space, more than 4 miles of public trails, and improve emergency access. This is reasonable growth done right. As a realtor and a resident, I can tell you this valley needs exactly what Belcaro delivers. I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Di Thompson. I am also a local realtor, and I serve as chair of the board of the Santa Clarita Valley Chamber of Commerce. I signed the Chamber's letter of support on behalf of our Board of Directors, and tonight I want to speak to the local business and economic side of this project. As a realtor, I see our housing shortage every day, especially for our local seniors. We have long-term residents ready to downsize, but nowhere suitable to go. So they either stay in homes that no longer serve them or fit, or leave the valley entirely. Belcaro helps to remove this obstacle. Those 341 senior homes give our older residents a place to move to, and when they do, it opens up existing family homes for the next generation. That kind of mobility is healthy for the whole market. The business case is just as strong. Belcaro means construction activity, local jobs, and new residents who shop, dine, and spend right here in Santa Clarita Valley. Senior residents are steady, stable, engaged community members. And because it's the senior community, it comes without the added strain on our school system that conventional development always brings. The Chamber supports responsible, well-designed growth because that's what keeps our local economy strong and our quality of life high. Belcaro fits that standard. Senior housing, open space, recreation, improved access, and public safety benefits all in one project. On behalf of the SCV Chamber, we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's no way I can take her 59 seconds right now. I'm kidding. Chair Keith and Commissioners, my name is Daniel Rodriguez, and I'm taking a little different approach from the rest of the speakers today. I've lived in Sand Canyon area for over 20 years. I was there when the Sand Fire in 2016. As a retired law enforcement officer of 24 and a half years and owner of security, safety, and an emergency management company, and a subject matter expert in incident command, I gotta say, going through that, what I went through while I was at work was a very tough thing to go through, especially having a family and at that time 4 small kids at home, trying to evacuate them, and at the same time trying to do my work at home, at the station. So when my neighbors raise evacuation as a concern, I take it very seriously. I've lived it. And that's exactly why I support the Belcaro project. The honest concern in this canyon is being caught with too many few ways out. I understand this anxiety, and I understand the PTSD that we'll have following the Sand Fire in 2016. But we have to compare the Sand Canyon with the project to the canyon without it, and Belcaro adds evacuation capacity. It doesn't really take it away, in my opinion. Here's what it brings that we don't have today: a secondary emergency access route through the canyon, a dedicated emergency staging area for command operations, and most importantly, a secure refuge for horses. Horses is a big thing in the Sand Canyon area. Unfortunately, I don't have any because they're too expensive, but it's a big thing there, which anyone in Sand Canyon knows it's a real big need. A new segment of the Lost Canyon Road heading west towards Vista Canyon with a new bridge across the river connecting to Soledad is a genuine second way out. Plus a roundabout in the city, traffic study right there on the corner of Sand Canyon and Lost Canyon area, which could potentially evacuate time by around 10%. I lived it. It took me about 27 minutes to get out of, well, it took my wife and kids about 27 minutes to get out of the Sand Canyon area. And the way that we evacuate has significantly changed since 2016. Back then, the canyon was just all told, literally at once, everybody needed to evacuate. Today, LA County Fire runs different phases, and their phases are much, much coordinated, better coordinated than it was back then, based on lessons learned and the protocols are much, much better now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next three speakers are Eric Angel, Chris Aubrey, and Diane Wilson. If you could please make your way up.
Good evening, Chair Keith and members of the commission. My name is Eric Engel, and I want to echo the sentiments of some of the previous speakers regarding the need for senior housing. Santa Clarita is a place people want to live, and for years, we haven't built enough of the right homes to match that demand. When supply stays flat and demand keeps climbing, prices rise, and people who feel it first are the ones with the least flexibility, including our seniors. Belcaro Canyon is exactly the kind of housing we should be saying yes to. It's age restricted for residents 55 and older, so it directly serves a group our market underserves. It doesn't add students to our schools. It generates fewer daily car trips than conventional housing. And it puts homes where infrastructure and amenities already exist, rather than pushing growth somewhere less suitable. I'd also like to point out that this project provides 341 homes on a site that could understate density bonus law and have supported substantially more units. The applicant is proposing a lower intensity senior community, not maxing out the yield. That's a responsible choice for Santa Clarita. The need for housing isn't abstract in Santa Clarita. This housing is literally for our parents and grandparents. I respectfully urge the commission to support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, Commissioner, my name is Chris Aubrey. I'm a new resident, about 2 years in Sand Canyon. My wife and I, Jill, bought our house, our dream house, and come to find out that the oak tree that is in front of our house is going to be taken out. We live at the end of Lost Canyon, at where the Oak Springs Canyon Bridge is going to be developed. I would encourage you to look at that. There's some land dispute, I believe. They're encroaching on our land, taking some of that away. There's an access road that's going to be put behind our land that's going to bring some transients, I believe. So we have some concerns. But I would really urge you guys to look at the request you. Let me go on. I have more. There's a big, I'm a State Farm insurance agent. So these firestorms that are coming, I see them all the time. There's one in terms of easement access road in and out that J Street will not be available for any of the Lost Canyon residents or Lost Canyon Road. It'll only be for the Belcaro residents. And that traffic coming through, I am 55 years old. I drive 40,000 miles a year. So I understand that they are telling us that Belcaro drives less, but I highly, I don't think that's an accurate thing. Primary and most urgent concern is fire safety and evacuation. Sand Canyon is already known for a bottleneck. Primary concern, it's a lifeline out of the canyon during a wildfire. Adding 341 homes introduces additional vehicles already restricted, evacuation routes and high stress crises. Furthermore, this project is marked for a 55+ senior community. Statistically, seniors populations face a higher mobility challenges during rapid emergencies. This will inevitably slow down evacuation times and unsafely force our first responders to divert critical firefighting assets to manage high stake bottlenecks. Under EQA, the EIR must prove that current evacuation time will remain completely unchanged. Simple paperwork check is not enough out of the 7,000 pages, apparently. But I would really demand a dynamic, real-life wildfire evacuation before this project moves an inch further. I reiterate, evacuation modeling for peak conditions, credibly worst-case variables that use defensive data sources. at a time. There's a ton more I would love to talk to you guys. Being a resident, it's just it's difficult to lay everything out. And I know it's easy to look at map, but it affects our lives because we're not. All those trucks going in front of our house are going to disturb our life quality.
Thank you, Chris.
Greetings, planning commissioners. My name is Diane Wilson. I've lived here 39 years.
Could you?
Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm very concerned about fire safety in a very high fire hazard severity zone and evacuation. Sand Canyon is in a very high fire hazard severity zone. It's very difficult to get fire insurance. It's very expensive. And sometimes the winds are too high for air support. So part of that helipad idea could be an issue. In the Palisades, the fire spread very quickly and the streets were jammed. People ran for their lives. And the problem is escaping just by that roundabout. This intersection's already very congested. There needs to be another road to safety. I think we need a bridge across the river or create another, or create a detour off Lost Canyon Road and add another lane and widen the Sand Canyon Bridge. I looked at the EIR quickly, and it says the additional bridge is infeasible because there's a southern, but it assumes this southern evacuation route, which is Placerita Canyon Road. And Placerita Canyon Road was closed in the 2016 Sand Fire, the Cross and Walker fires in 2006, and the very huge Foothill Fire of 2004. So based on those closures, I think we need to be able to exit going north on Sand Canyon Road. We need multiple safe evacuation routes that are more important than they're worried about biological and ecological impacts, which are important. But the bridge is more, safety is more important than that. And we need evacuation analysis that evaluates if the southern evacuation route is closed, because is that analysis correct, or is it planning on Placerita Canyon being open? And please require that to be checked. The literature also says it's a safe as secondary emergency access through Robinson Ranch Road. That's not very helpful. Please drive it, because you get back to Sand Canyon. So you're on Sand Canyon, and I need to be able to go north on Sand Canyon and to escape. And I think if the project goes forward, that'd be fine, but let's have another way out. Build a new bridge. And with 341 homes, you've got enough money to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm 83 and I can't run for my life.
Before I call the next speaker, just a reminder that everyone only has 3 minutes, so even clapping takes away seconds. Feel free to wave your hands in support. That way they can keep talking without the noise factor. It just helps the interruption. So I appreciate the passion, but just to be courteous to other speakers. With that, the next 3 speakers are Jeff Beebe, Scott Riddle, and Rhonda Riddle.
Hello, I'm Jeff Beebe. Thank you, guys. I've been a resident for over 25 years. On Lost Canyon, we have 2 homes back to, side by side. I got an 85-year mother-in-law right there next to us, and I do have a son that's 100% disabled from a drunk driver hitting my wife and him. And now you're wanting to put 1,000 cars running down Lost Canyon and not give another access for fire escape or anything like that. We've went through 4 fires. I've knocked on doors, kicked doors down, carried elderly people out, and we have horses also. And to see the destruction of what's happening when there's a fire and people trying to get out. And not only that, the flooding. We've watched mobile homes get washed down the river. We watched where his house is, 4 houses down from mine, where that water has overflown people and running down Lost Canyon to the point that there's properties behind me that got built up, and the water comes down Lost Canyon and floods into the back of our property that we've had to put sump pumps in to not flood out one of our homes. But the main thing is down Soledad Canyon, right at Oak Springs, where where the storage yard is, there's already already an underpass going under Soledad. There was an existing bridge going over already to Sand Canyon. Why can't that be done? Because it will be a disaster. You're saying, oh, it won't affect. We hear all these people saying it won't affect us. It will affect us. You're putting 350 homes there. It's going to affect us. We've already lived through it. And so my opinion is if he wants to do it, pay the price and put another evacuation bridge for us going underneath the freeway right there where the storage yard is, going across and not affect Lost Canyon at all. And the second thing is my son's 100% able. There's a Disability Act. And if it does go through, I want sidewalks going down my street. I want bridle paths too. I have horses. But my son has to have concrete to asphalt. And he's already got hit once. I'm not going to have a sidewalk or any elderly people not be able to get out because there's 1,000 cars going down the street and not a sidewalk. So the Handicap and Disability Act, I'm going to be 100% in your guys' back pocket. Lawsuits or whatever it takes, it's not going to happen in that sense. I'm not going to let my son or my family get hurt because of a fire and all these people rushing down the streets. So my feeling is a bridge needs to be put across that wash, and I want you guys to get out of your head, get in your heart, please, and look at the kids down the street. A roundabout, those kids are almost getting hit already. But we need to forget the money on real estate, making money, and think of the families and think about how people are going to get hurt.
Thank you, Jeff.
Hi, my name's Scott Riddle. I own the last house on Comet Way, a street that hasn't been mentioned. I don't know why. Together with my neighbors, a neighbor that's here, we own the land that was a cul-de-sac when we bought. With the city's help, a handful of Oak Springs residents worked with developers who had future plans to open up Comet Way with promises of water, access, etc. They did not fight future development. So that happened. An expensive lawsuit ensued, and thank you very much, allowing the removal of the cul-de-sac that was promised to many Comet homeowners. Outcome of the lawsuit was the extension of Comet Way over my property and my neighbor's property was allowed to exist for plaintiffs only. The extension was built to driveway standards over 2 high-pressure gas lines, the ones you guys are talking about. The liability for passage as well as maintenance was to be held by the plaintiffs, not that they got a policy or kept it in effect. Comet Way is not and was never intended to be a thoroughfare for the upcoming multiple developments. Comet Way is a street that will be used by these developments. All these ways out through Crystal Springs, it dumps back out on the Comet Way. I mean, come on, people. Comet Way, dumps back out on the Sand Canyon. Sand Canyon can't take the traffic. What's a shorter way out? Comet Way. So, of course, they're going to want to use it. When the secondary access is open for Oak Springs, Comet Way should revert to the cul-de-sac it normally was, a lock gate even, so it can be used for emergencies. Sure, why not? Gates are allowed all over the city, so that shouldn't be an issue. There's one right down the street from me. Comet owners have been overlooked and abused for far too long. Comet Way will not be the thoroughfare for hundreds of homes, not over my private property. We bought into the canyon because it was planned as a rural community with 2-acre minimum lots. Bill Carroll with this 1/8 lot should not be allowed. Same builder has major tracks being built right down Soledad by the old swap meet. Put the retirement community there. It's closer to the senior center. If allowed, the city and developers have plans for 1,000 more homes in Canyon. We have 1,000 homes now. Imagine the impact of traffic on Sand Canyon. Getting by In-N-Out Burger is hard enough right now. It's going to be terrible just trying to get by there any time of day. And I'm retired now. I make more runs now and more errands now than I ever did. I don't go to work for 8 hours and come back like I did. I'm driving all day long. My wife tells me to go out. Grandkids need me. I'm not buying this seniors drive less. No way. Don't let the city allow the destruction and the enjoyable use of our property. Thank you. And I wanted to mention, every day when I go in and out of the canyon, I'm carefully watching for all those kids. How are the kids going to get by this roundabout? It's a terrible idea. You better have a bridge over the top to let the kids go. So the only logical thing is another way out of the canyon that the last gentleman has discussed. You need another way out over the wash because you can't dump everything on the Sand Canyon, and that's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to ram it down Comet Way and the rest of these poor people. And that's about it. Fire, of course, is a major concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe over here.
If you could state your name for the record and begin, please.
34 years ago, we're right back where we started. 34 years ago, we're right back where we started. All of these maps were dated.
I'm sorry, could you state your name for the record, please?
Rhonda Riddle.
Thank you.
Scott's wife. In an LA Times article, April 12, 2017, it talks about secret financial deals between developers and neighborhood leaders, known as hush money. This is what happened to the residents on Comet Way by a group of Oak Spring residents that sued to open Comet Way. Many residents in Oak Spring Canyon were police and firemen who worked a secret deal with the developers in exchange for infrastructure in their neighborhood, as my husband already mentioned. I don't know if actual money changed hands, but what I do know is that a parcel of land from this old American Beauty Jack Shines property, one of the Oak Spring residents that was also a active member of this group, neighborhood group, was given a parcel of land known as Lot 300 down in here. So I want to point out that this yellow mark is the gas line easement, 100-foot transmission line, which just the New Urban West mentions as an easement. But it's a little more important than just saying an easement. So it's a transmission line. And as you can see, it perfectly aligns with Comet Way, where we live. So you can see why we didn't want the street to go through. We have a lot of problems that exist on Comet Way. Comet Way remains a private street. The insurance, the liability, the maintenance, they all remain our burden. The tract map was to be re-recorded. The city had asked the county to re-record the tract map because the developer was no longer required to put in the 64-foot right-of-way, the streets, the street lights. And that never happened. The other issue, as the surveys are all screwed up, our lot was bisected by the road and jumps over to our neighbors. The neighbors jumps over here. Some of the survey marks are in the doorstep of some other properties or in the front yards of others. This needs to be resolved. And the city at the time was implicit in this because we worked and had many meetings with Rich Henderson, George Carvalho, all of those people. The abandoned railroad is also an issue because surveyors conveniently left it off of this tract because I think they were wondering, where are we going to put the road? Because really, all of this wasn't because Oak Spring people needed it.
Thank you.
It was for the developers.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Next three speakers, Matthew Lynch, Lisa DeSouza, and Richard Anderson, please.
Thank you, council people, city people. My name is Matthew Lynch, and I live at the corner of Lost Canyon and Sand Canyon, which is directly impacted by this roundabout plan. I've talked with several people in the city. I asked, why did you design it the way it is? And they said, well, it's designed by the Urban West folks. So basically, I'm pleading with you for a adjustment to the plans that are currently being considered. as it stands, you want to remove, I have 3 entrances and exits on my property and 2 of them are closed. They go around the old oak tree that's on the west side of my property. So I use access on the north side, and it's a gated. And I'm being told that when this is built, that I can't use that access anymore. And then they're telling me that I can't use the north part of my horseshoe on the west side of the property, that my only access would be the south side. Well, I don't want to drive in and out on Sand Canyon. It's a racetrack. It's dangerous. I live there. I see what happens. This roundabout is not going to solve a traffic problem. It's going to add to it. It's going to make it worse. You have a controlled intersection right now, and all you need to do is put in some traffic signals or something like that. And if we're talking about from 24-second wait to 7-second wait, are you kidding me? 7 seconds? We're talking seconds here? What is this? And not to mention, yeah, the children are around during school, but they're all this traffic, all this pedestrian traffic you're talking about, it doesn't exist. And you're not going to get people that live a mile down the road that are all senior citizens walking down trying to get through the roundabout. So there has to be a better way of doing it. I'm asking just for a little consideration. You know, I moved up here I've lived in that house for 22 years on that property. And I plan on dying up here. But it doesn't look that way now. There's just too much going on. And another thing about this street, this J Street, I can guarantee you there's not one person that's going to live in that Vaccaro that's going to drive towards the fire. The fire's not going to be in the wash, and it's not going to be at Vaccaro. It'll be in the mountains. And everyone's trying to get away, trying to drive south or north. So, you know, and Lost Canyon is not going to be able to handle a mass exodus, and neither is Sand Canyon. So I'm just, thank you for being concerned about the roundabout. Please continue. You know, it's not an end-all, be-all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Lisa D'Souza. I'm actually a resident of Sand Canyon, and on behalf of the current residents of Sand Canyon and the proposed 682 residents, assuming only 2 people per the 341 proposed homes, my only question to this committee and the developers is, how do we evacuate? And since we have 3 minutes and a picture is worth 1,000 words, I brought some visual aids. Sand fire, 2016. Day 1, I'm standing in the exact spot that this proposed development is. The fire is burning on the ridge. My personal favorite, sand fire, day 2, when it turned and came right back at us. There is no time for a phased evacuation. In fact, the moment I took this picture, we had sheriffs coming down the street telling us we had to leave immediately. Clothes on our back, no time to pack, no time to evacuate our horses. Open the gates, let them run, pray they survive. When we said no, we had to sign a waiver that said that we would not hold them liable. And then we had to submit some of our DNA so that they could easily identify our bodies. This is one, it's hard to see, but the black smoke, one of the houses we lost in Iron Canyon that day. Sorry, it's shaky, but this is when it crested the ridge and the fire was coming right at us and we started running. 2019, tick fire, burning towards the 14. Here's another perspective of the tick fire. This is standing in the exact spot of the proposed development. Picture I didn't get, later that evening, we had a wind event. Wind event similar to what the Palisades had, similar to what Eaton had. That means there's no air support. It jumped the 14. It burned right up to the railroad tracks. That's your north entrance. That means if this happens again, people's only 682 people, their only way in and out is that J Street exit. 2023, Country Club brush fire. Here's some water drops, more water drops. Where did it burn? South side, J Street exit. I want to talk in the next 30 seconds that I have about the ability to evacuate. In the Sand Fire and Tick Fire, the Lost Canyon, regardless of whether they extend the road, was impassable. We had fire trucks on one side for structure protection. We had horse trailers on the other side. What I have not heard is about the equestrian community. I also want to call out the Tick Fire. We had a blackout. SoCal Edison, how's that electric going to work? So you're going to tell me that 682 people are going to go down J Street, drop onto Sand Canyon, and evacuate?
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name is Richard Anderson. I've been a resident of Lost Canyon since 71, 72. So it's been a while. And I echo some of the remarks about the bridge across there. There used to be a bridge years ago when I was a kid. And it is definitely a necessity. If you're going to put that many more people up in that canyon, and you're going to have a problem. And the equestrian people that are up there, they just don't have a small vehicle to get in and out of there. And it impacts trying to get out of there. It's going to be a pain in the butt for them with their trailers and stuff. And we've done the evacuations ourselves. And but it really, if you want to know how that's going to handle the floods and all that coming down through that trestle, I've been there before, and we pulled the debris out of that trestle to keep it from taking it out. The water rushes through there like nobody's business. So it has to be addressed also. I'm sure they got that bridge there for that. But at the same time, you're definitely going to need to get another access out of there. I think the elephant's out of the room. So with that said, I hope that you guys can figure that out, but that's on you. And I might not be here for that, but at the same time, I hope you guys can figure that out. Because there are people up there that are elderly too, that live there now. And those residents that are living up there right now, they deal with this stuff all the time. That lady with the pictures, she's honest. I mean, she's telling you. And I back up to the railroad track. So sometimes I can get out that way, but I couldn't get out of Lost Canyon at all. It was completely impacted on that last fire. So give it what you got, but it's on you.
Thank you. All right, the next three speakers are Christy Powers, George Thomas, and Sherilyn Bushwell.
Hello, I'm Christy Powers. I'd like to speak as a realtor and also as a registered nurse. I have been living in Sand Canyon for over 13 years. Prior to that, I was living in Bridgeport and Newport area near the Belcaro. And I could tell you as a realtor, I sold many properties there, and there only needs to be one person that is 55 or older to qualify to live there. That means those 2-story, 3-bedroom homes that grandma doesn't need to live in, they bring their children and their grandchildren can live there to help them. For one, to pay the bills, help them with assistance. Many homes that I sold there were families. They weren't senior citizens. Maybe one person was. But at some point, that one person went to assisted living, whatever, they moved. So you have neighborhoods that had children, lots of cars because everyone's driving. Grandma drives everywhere because she has nothing but time on her hands now that she doesn't work and she's retired. Her children, grandchildren have friends. There are tons of cars there. There's more activity there than it's being told. Secondly, I'd like to say there's a lot of different opinions. Are they new residents that are moving in, or are they downsizing Sand Canyon residents? Because I've heard some conflicting stories there, what we heard today. Also, with horses, I'd like to say that 13 years in Sand Canyon, I saw the floods take out roads. I saw the fires that we had to get out of quickly. And if someone has a horse trailer, I have horses, there is no way you can load horses in a large trailer and try to get around a stupid roundabout. It's just not, it's not feasible. I'd like to say that also, if I have horses, the last place I'm going to be is stuck in that center. I want to get as far out of the canyon as possible. That's a death trap, and that's all on your guys' hands. And I invite you guys to be the first residents in that community. And go ahead and enjoy that, because everything that's been told to us today is farthest from the truth. It's all about money. It's on your guys' hands. You're putting everybody in a bad situation where it's hazardous. You're creating more congestion, and all the new drivers, the old people that are driving, that's going to be chaos. No one's going to go around a roundabout, and people are going to be injured because of the hazards that this is creating. And there's no new roads and no safe way for anyone to get out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Oh,
I'm up Sherilyn Boswell, not Bushwell.
yes, go ahead.
Okay, hi. I have a lot of thoughts, but I think one of the things that I find interesting is what is not being said, and that is that the infrastructure is already being built, and the access has been coming through Comet Way, which is not a legal road, and it is not the width of a road. It is not built to hold the strength of the trucks that are coming through. There's already electrical lines going through, poles going through, gravel trucks on a daily basis. And I'm like kind of fired up because I raised my kids there. And I just want to say before I forget something, that piece of property that the trucks are going through is my property primarily. And I've had to raise my kids there. And the amount of things, so I can articulate, it's not fully developed, it's not legal. It's 30 feet wide, like Scott was saying, 2 driveways. Okay, so during the sand fire, disaster. I would say most of us were told to evacuate with literally the clothes on our back and a credit card, and couldn't get out of the canyon. So that's interesting. But also, additionally, it functions as an easement. I would like it to be looked at closing Comet Way down if this goes further, and putting it back to its original cul-de-sac or gated. There are plenty of gates all over Sand Canyon. But furthermore, I find it interesting that the burden financially has been put on a small little street of Comet Way, and then you're going to gate off this Belcaro, and that you guys with all the money to develop have left that burden on this little street, and that it's not being mentioned that, again, like I said, that this is the way right now that the construction and these roads and everything are being developed is through this small little thing. And furthermore, the things that have occurred with the current population through access of that road, cars have revved up their engines towards my children, trying to, ask people to slow down. We've had tires slashed for parking in front of my house. We've had my kids' zip line cut. There's other crimes that have happened, so I can only imagine that the increase in traffic, and I think it's really naive or maybe intentionally not being said or mentioning Comet Way, because it really isn't a legal access road. Just the safety, and that, I'm losing my train of thought 'cause I'm so fired up about raising children, and that I think that not notifying us, I walk, which is how I met most of the neighbors. I walk 5 miles all the way up to Lost Canyon over in Fair Oaks Ranch every day. That's how I learned about this, because we weren't notified. I think intentionally. I'm a little disappointed. I do not approve it without a better look for safety in the canyon fire, and that this developer.
Thank you. George Thomas.
My name is George Thomas. I apologize for the hat. No disrespect. It's for medical reasons, believe it or not. I'm strongly opposed to this project. I've lived in
Santa Clarita for the Valley for 53 years, Sand Canyon for 42 years. Unlike what we're being told, I'm definitely a senior. I've loved my 1 acre lot. You know, I love my home. I don't want to move to their project, no matter how nice it might be. I like my house. And I think Christy pointed it out that we're being told one thing, that new residents are going to move in, and at the same time, we're being told Sand Canyon residents can stay close. So which is it? I don't know, but most of my Sand Canyon friends aren't here tonight. They all said for the same reason. They said, it doesn't matter if we show up, no matter what we say, this is going to be approved. And quite honestly, I know many of you here, the commission, and I respect you, but your hands are tied, and I'm sure this will be approved at some level, which is disappointing, but that's why there aren't more people here. Evacuations, I've been evacuated. I personally don't leave my home. I stay at my house, but through the sand fire, the tick fire, all the fires, the floods, Sand Canyon is a freaking nightmare. And I've have the dirt bike, and I've traveled up and down, you know, and gotten out for food and things like that during evacuations. But you don't live in Sand Canyon. None of you do. I know that nobody here, you know, that's with this development and the planning commissioners, you don't live in Sand Canyon. I moved there, you know, because it's an equestrian, rural area. And if I had my choice, I would go with, what is it called? Alternative 3, 109 homes versus 341. If we have to have anything, that would be my thing. What nobody mentions is because of ways, Sand Canyon is a nightmare if the 14 is backed up, which happens regularly. I mean, it's placerated, people get off on the 14, placerated a Sand Canyon, and this roundabout is a joke. I don't know anybody that wants one. There's a fire chief here that's paid for by the developers, ex-fire chief, and he has certain opinions based on his getting paid. But I can tell you, firemen that work at 132s up Sand Canyon hate the 2 roundabouts that you approved. With that,
Thank you for your comment. The next 3 speakers are Lynn Planbeck, Guy Moore, and Bob Kamalsa. I apologize. Bye.
Lynn Planbeck, Santa Clarita Organization for Planning and the Environment. I'd like to begin by just thanking you for all your great questions, especially the one about why we're having a hearing when the EIR was just released today. I mean, I really feel cheated, and I think a lot of people probably do here too. You know, you're saying there's a limited number of hearings, and yet you have the first hearing before anybody's even had a chance to look at the documents. Waste of your time, waste of our time. Second of all, the Housing Crisis Act of 2019 that this is supposedly being brought under excludes wildfire areas. It excludes them. It says the act doesn't include those areas. So if it's not, this project is not limited to 5 hearings. And I feel really concerned that the planning department, not only did they plan to have this hearing before we could read the EIR, but they are giving you misinformation. This was an issue in Wiley Canyon for the same reasons. Also, the Housing Crisis Act says that if you have health concerns, that's a legitimate reason for disapproving the project. So you're not forced to approve this project. And there are really huge concerns with wildfire. We have been through this now with this same developer over on the west side for many of the same reasons that people are bringing to you today: inadequate evacuation, fire department's too far away. But Also, senior housing, 4-story senior housing, there's only a requirement for an hour and a half of backup electricity. So how are those seniors going to get out of the 4th floor? And one of the things the developer responded was, well, we're not renting to disabled people. Well, we have to say, you know, you cannot exclude disabled people. And they may move in perfectly ambulatory, and then later they get sick. So this is something, if you are going to approve something like this, which I don't think you should, at least require a backup storage electricity. Power shutoffs, they lose all their food in their refrigerator. They can't, there's no elevator for them to get up and down. Please think about that. I mean, this is supposedly being built to help seniors, and then you're not really caring for them. And also, I don't think it would be legal to present a alternate in an EIR that's not something that you can actually build. So I think you're going to have to either exclude alternate number 3, or you're going to have to say that that would be an acceptable alternative. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Lynn.
Good evening. What's the significance of this number? What's the significance of this number?
I'm sorry, could you state your name for the record?
My name is Guy Moore.
Thank you.
Thank you. 85 people died in the 2018 Camp Paradise fire. The 2016 Sand Canyon fire demonstrated the same potential for disaster. Gridlock, an hour and a half, a friend of mine, to get from a mile and a half up through the roundabout location you're proposing. In aviation, we learn from disasters through objective failure analysis, cause and corrective action. How are we even considering this? This project presents many issues, but foremost is evacuation. This project needs, at a minimum, a 4-lane bridge across the riverbed, regardless of what it costs. What price do you put on lives? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mac McClure, you will be next.
My name is Bob Kalser. At the outset, what I would like to say is I think this meeting is premature. The EIR should have been given to the planning commissioners at least a month before this meeting. This seems to be deja vu to me, that Congress used to behave like this, get a 1,000-page bill the same day you go to sign it. That's why I get that impression. At the outset, I love Belcaro. Great project, wrong location. It's like so as far as I know, when Sand Canyon came into Santa Clarita, the city made it a special standards district, and it's codified under Chapter 17.39 of the Santa Clarita Municipal Code. Because when the city adopted its first Unified Development Code in 1992, it created the Sand Canyon Special Standards District specifically to preserve the area's existing rural and equestrian character. I think that is being violated by this project. I'm going to put some numbers here. So 341 single-family homes. The planning numbers that California takes and our city takes is 1.9 to 2 vehicles per home and 3 individuals per home, which gives you 1,023 individuals and 682 extra vehicles. Sand Canyon has 1,100 homes existing, doesn't include 580 homes of Sage at the Sand Canyon Plaza, and doesn't include Sage at Sand Canyon, 134 homes. These 1,100 homes will give you 2,200 vehicles, or a total of, if you add the Belcaro, 2,682. You take 80% of that, assuming some people are out, you're left with 2,000 vehicles. If your evac rate is 5 seconds, not 7, is going to take you 2 hours and 45 minutes to evacuate. Sand Canyon was never designed for high-density homes, high-density construction. That's why you have only one exit. Clarita Canyon is really not an exit because that'll get shut down if you get a fire coming in. So with these issues, when we talk about, and a lot of speakers have spoken about bridges and the other things that adds on to the cost, but you have a situation here that you're making an equestrian and rural community. That's why you don't have sidewalks. That's why you don't have street lights. And now you put a high-density community there, you've got a problem. Roundabouts, when there's countries that have roundabouts, when the traffic is high, they have traffic lights at each entry point to the roundabout. So it doesn't become a roundabout, it creates more of a problem. And these should be looked at from safety and from traffic point of view. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mac McClure. My wife and Christina and I have lived at 16462 Lost Canyon Road since 1999. And we happen to be, with Matthew, the closest to the roundabout, 50 to 75 feet, I would guess. So first of all, I wanted to thank the Commissioners for asking those questions that you did to get answers for, and I'd love to hear those answers also. Because that's the main concern right now, is that. And I would like to, we have reports and we have all these things coming out, and I would like to encourage you to do it the old-fashioned way. Any commissioner and any Valcaro executives, if they could come and sit at the roundabout for a half an hour, I'll provide the chairs and the lemonade for them, because that's where you get the real picture. You can see pictures, but if you get the real life view like I do. Any of you guys have any questions? I have videos, I have documentation for years on this problem. Schools, kids crossing, all kinds of stuff, accidents. The fires, they couldn't drive down Sand Canyon, so they had to walk their horses out. And I had over 18 horses in my backyard that were just left there because they couldn't get them out. So we lived it, and fires, floods. I pay an enormous amount in flood insurance because it's all, a real high flood area. I have video of the trailer across the wash that went into the river. So, and I also have video of the water coming down Sand Canyon underneath the bridge where the two schools are, and they can't get out that way. Water was coming over the bridge. So anyways, I just want to let you know. And I also want to make sure that you include the projects that haven't been done. See, I was there when the first one, I believe you said it was Macaro, way back then. I went to the meeting, and they were supposed to build the roundabout years ago. Vista Canyon comes, they're supposed to do it. Didn't happen. The city even had to build the bridge. They've taken over the parking lot. They took over the water. So it's on and on. So my concern is, how am I going to be reassured that this is even going to happen? And how does the city decide that after all this, remember, people said the lessons learned. So anyways, I'm just encouraging you to come out and see for ourselves. And again, I appreciate all your guys' questions, and let us speak. Thank you.
Thank you. The following three speakers submitted their cards late. Tonight, I'm going to call you up because we are going to have multiple hearings, so I'm going to allow you to speak. But in the future, try to make sure you get them in on time. I don't want you to be cut out if that were to happen. So for tonight, we're going to read these and have these three speakers, but just try to be here on time next time so we can make sure we hear them. So I have, and I apologize, the handwriting sometimes, Mike Pago, it looks like, Dan Hefner, and Jose Tapia, I believe, are the next three speakers.
Good evening.
My name is Mike Rigo, and I own the property at the very end of Oak Springs Canyon, right before you go under the railroad tracks. So I'm pretty much the closest property to this development. And I have a few questions I want to get on the record. My first question is, throughout the study, the term significant impact is used repeatedly. Can someone please explain exactly what objective standards were used to determine what qualifies as significant impact? Since the word significant can mean different things to different people, what measures, what criteria or thresholds were used to distinguish a significant impact from one that is not? Second question is, was the impact analysis performed on a property-by-property basis? In other words, will some property owners experience greater impacts than others based on their location, access, drainage, traffic, topography, and other site-specific conditions? If so, can someone please explain those differences? Third, the proposed crossing through the wash carries substantial stormwater during heavy rains. What engineering and drainage studies were completed to determine how this crossing will affect water flow, erosion, and flooding? And what specific measures are being taken to ensure the crossing does not create flooding or negative impact to neighboring properties? Fourth, property owners have been trying to build that crossing for years. In fact, 3 years ago, we were told it was not feasible because it was in a wash. What has changed? What engineering, environmental, or regulatory findings now support the conclusion that that same crossing suddenly is considered feasible? Fifth, the proposed roundabout has been promoted as one of the primary benefits of this development. If this roundabout has been recognized as a necessary infrastructure, why wasn't it planned, funded, and constructed independently of this development? My last question is for the developer. Are they prepared to deal with the consequences and the disaster that will happen when we try and evacuate and we can't? It's not a question of if there's a fire, it's a matter of when there's a fire. And this developer has been put on notice that it's not safe, no matter what their studies say. Thank you, and I look forward to a response for the record. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dan Hefner, and it's my first time to do a speaking like this situation. I'm a new resident to Canyon Country. My wife and I moved there 3 years ago, and I moved to Canyon Country, not Canyon City. So my concern is, I guess, it's the environmental impact, both light pollution, because I'm an amateur astronomer, and also the Santa Ana River, the ecology of the habitat could be destroyed and stuff with the I heard I guess the bumblebee, and the salamanders and the hummingbird hawk moth. And so I've been here just a little while, and I've already been 6 months when I first moved in, a victim of crime. My house was burglarized. And I see, and just like a month ago, I lost my my house insurance because no one can get fire insurance. I hear everyone's losing it, my neighbors and everyone. I'm the youngest one in the community, Pine Tree community. I'm 56, but I would say I would vote alternative number one. I would not support the building. I wouldn't move there. There's plenty of houses available on the rental market or just real estate, and I see there's so much mass exodus of California anyways. I see there's going to be a lot of open housing, and with the building of this structures, it's like they say that there will be 1,000 cars because the whole family will move in. I see houses up in my community. There's 3 families to a home, and there's no parking on the side of the street, and it's going to be transients, crime, and everything, I think, with the destruction of the ecology in that area right down there. So, all right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jose?
Good evening. My name is Jose Tapia, and
First of all, I want to say thank you for affording me the time to speak here today, even though I submitted my request late. So I'm a Santa Clarita resident for the past 23 years. I have a wife and 2 kids, and we've recently become a part of the equestrian community. We live on Sand Canyon. So living here for that long, we've been affected and we've been witness to obviously the horrors of the recent fires that all of us have succumbed to. So my primary concern is, as all of us have been echoing here, is what are we doing about the evacuation routes? What are we doing to get not only the current amount of residents that we have here living on Sand Canyon and in Canyon Country out? All these proposals should have been made, that helipad should have been made for the current residents. All the evacuation routes should have been done for the current residents, let alone you want to put in an additional 341 homes and all the people that are going to be moving here to Santa Clarita or to Canyon Country. What are we doing? I mean, this is a disaster and a fire trap, not only for the current residents, but for the future residents that you guys, senior residents that you guys are proposing to. I echo what somebody else said, that this is a good development, but not for this property, not for this location. Maybe it should be going somewhere else where we don't have the current problems of trying to evacuate all the residents during a fire or a flood. So I strongly oppose this development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that is the end of our live speakers. Before I call the applicant back up for any rebuttal, I do want to note that we had 3 written, 1 in support, will provide better road infrastructure, 1 opposed, no comment, and 1 neutral, just needs additional access points. So with that, that is all the speakers, and at this time, I will allow the applicant to come back up to rebuttal.
Chair Keith, members of the commission, thank you. Listen, I think we've taken a lot of notes tonight, not just from your questions you have about the project, but from the public as well. And I think we'd like to utilize future hearings for an opportunity to address some of these issues more closely. That will allow, obviously, the commission and the members of the public to read the EIR and get further through that process and have a good discussion. I think we have a lot of good information to share that will help relay some of these concerns tonight. So we'd like to come back at a future date and share that information with you.
Thank you, John. At this time, I'm going to allow the item for discussion in case there's still comments to the applicant or to the planning staff before I close public comment period. So does any commissioner have any comments at this time before we have our own discussion when public comments close? I have a couple, and I hate to ask questions that I feel like I'll find out later when I read, which is part of the problem I feel happened tonight. And I do think some of these will be answered, at least I hope so. But I do want to go on record. I echo the condition of approval of the roundabout. I'd love to know when that is triggered to be built. I assume that will be in there, but I'm just going on record. I'd like to understand, and it's interesting, we heard some speakers on that, I'd like to understand the Oak Spring Road access and how that interacts with the project. I know it's not part of the project, but we can't pretend there isn't a dirt road there that someone can drive on or not. And it's just, it exists. So I would like to hear a little bit more from staff on how that interaction is going to happen. And I do think we heard some speakers on that. The helipod was, I'm sure, again, more details in there. Love to understand how many gallons it is, how it refills and all that. Hopefully that's in there. I think I heard the applicant say that there was a 5-foot zone 0 on the houses within the project. And so I will read more on that. That was good to hear. And then the last one was just from a comment, and we might not look like it, but we do hear everyone's comments. I did hear someone say that they are losing access, a current access that they have to the public road, and I just would like staff to confirm that or deny it or work with the applicant. I would just like to better understand if somebody is losing access they currently have legal access. I understand there's we can all make non-legal acts, legal acts. I'd just like to hear a little bit on that next time we speak. And it may be within the document. Again, that's my disclaimer. Understand that when I read the EIR, many of these questions may be answered, but just to go on record, I wanted to state that. So if there's no other comments right now, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the hearing and allow for additional commissioner discussion on the item.
I just want to thank Commissioner Faina for saying what I was going to say, but you said it first, because I've been sitting and wondering about those 7,000 pages all day. And actually, I was wondering about it Thursday night at 6:49 when we got the packet, and I said, oh my gosh, are we really getting this at 6:49 tonight? And then I was so surprised because there was no EIR there, so I was even more surprised. So thank you for bringing that up, because I don't think I've been on the commission for 16, maybe, I don't know, longer years. I don't think I've ever seen this before, so thank you for bringing that up. We'll have a lot more questions the next meeting. I do, just really confused about all these access and roads and everything, and I know we did a drone trip, but I get car sick, and watching that drone video, I really had to put my eyes down because I couldn't watch it. I know if you don't have four-wheel drive cars in the city, I know. Pam has one, I have one. I don't know, we could share and go out there, but I would love to be able to have the city take us out there and show us this, drive us where Comet Way is, because I have no idea what we're doing to this. I just don't understand it at all. I was there for the Moncaras at the project. We did go out in four-wheel drive cars with the city and cross the railroad tracks and horses and saw this whole thing, but that was 15 years ago. I think that's really important for this. I think we kind of wasted this meeting. We could have done that study session there. But that's about it. And then the schedule, I think we need to talk about the schedule.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing to me is the schedule is a couple of reasons. One, we have a large EIR to read, and I think we all want to make sure we read it. But two, I guess my biggest concern is that the next hearing, as Vice Chair Faina said, it comes back before the close of the public comment period, which means that we'll have a second hearing, and in theory, more letters could come in on the project the next 3 or 4 days, or whatever, then I'm not doing my math, 3 days. And I would like to see all the public comments that are sent in on the EIR before we have our next hearing. I think that's important.
100%.
Yeah, but I think we need to keep in mind that the public needs an opportunity to come and address us before the close of the EIR period, so all those comments can be heard. Not everybody's going to want to write a letter,
or
send an email. So, I mean, I'm not on everybody's page with this thing seems compressed, and unnecessarily so, but I do really believe we need to let the public have a chance to come and talk again before the EIR period closes.
But they always talk about they don't have enough time. You know, we go that meeting after the EIR, they always say we didn't have enough time to read it. So, we're going to get that.
Everyone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
But if we had a planning commission, a second one, we will, obviously, they would still be able to come and make a comment on the record. That would be a part of the record at the planning commission, even if the EIR period has closed.
I understand that, but again, for people to have the opportunity to comment on the EIR, it's not going to be accepted
closed
after it's closed.
They won't be able to respond to those questions.
Yeah, there won't be a
unless they did a
official
written letter.
So that's my only concern about having a meeting after the close.
Okay.
I mean, it just makes what we've been talking about worse, right? Because no one had a chance to read it and comment tonight. And if our next meeting is going to be after the period closes, that even though they had a chance to read it, they're not going to have a chance to comment on it.
It's a little awkward. It's awkward.
King Solomon moment for you there, Chair.
Well, I just know that as an EIR manager, I have to respond to every comment that comes in. So I'm not quite, and maybe it's just a difference of the EIR closes, but anybody who makes a comment, we still have to respond to. So.
You're the boss.
I know, I'm just asking for some other.
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's tough. I see both sides of this. Folks can still come if the meeting's held after. I mean, really, we shouldn't have had this meeting until the EIR was out. And quite frankly, I'd like to, and this can be a separate item later, but even the 411-page agenda packet, I think next time I just won't come to the meeting unless it's done at least a week and a half, 2 weeks before. So if we need to vote on that to give staff direction, it's just unacceptable. 647's when I got it on the start of a 3-day holiday weekend. And, I'm pretty sure all of us are working. And, I know we get paid for these meetings, but it's just unnecessary. We can't do our job well.
No.
If we don't read it, we can't ask good questions if we don't have an effective time. So I really want to see in the future, and you guys can noodle on that or we can talk about a separate time, but I don't know if it's even something appropriate that we could make a motion and give direction to staff, but I just think it's unreasonable.
And just be aware if it gets pushed back after August 18th, doesn't that put us right into Labor Day holiday weekend again for our 7,000 pages of light reading?
Well, and yeah, with the next meeting, which is, I guess, let's just stick with that, right? With the next meeting, if we afford people the opportunity and we don't push it back to after the comment period, everyone will have the right to make comments. I understand.
Make comments to us.
Correct. Comments for consideration in the EIR, they still have that right, and everyone here that's vested in the project knows and will have that right. But still, to the point, if we have that meeting before the period closes, at the third meeting, we will be getting a bunch of comments, maybe we've never seen, and the response to the EIR, and that will be, I guess it doesn't have to, we can get clarity from staff on that, it doesn't have to be our last meeting, but I'm told that they want it to be our last meeting, so it will all have to get done.
It would only leave the council 2 meetings. If we took a fourth, it would leave them 1 meeting.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that doesn't allow for any appeal or anything like that.
Yeah, 5 meetings
And that's the
with
thing,
the
back
appeal.
in the day
That's
before
the
the state
predicament.
handcuffed us, we could have as many meetings as we felt we needed in order to hear everything and address everything. But now we've got this, this guillotine blade that cuts into our decision-making process.
I'm going to just agree with Commissioner Burkhardt. I'm okay with the 18th being the next meeting, I think that this meeting shouldn't have happened yet, but it did, and so I think we just need to go to the next scheduled meeting on the 18th. That's what I would be in favor of.
If that's going to happen, then what I would direct staff to do is within that 3-day window to provide us with the comment letters that may come in afterwards so that we can read them. I know they'll be a part of the final EIR and the response from the applicant, but I would still like to see them. I just hesitate to have another hearing with half the comments in potentially.
Yeah, and then I would say, I mean, I could get on board because it's about making sure people have the opportunity to address the EIR and read it into the record and still have it considered.
Yeah.
So totally respect that. And so I'm on board with that. The third meeting, at that point, we're going to need the final EIR, all the comments, and a month.
And how do you feel about getting 300 pages of comment letters the day of the meeting, which
No,
is
we
what
can't.
usually happens, and it's really hard at 3 o'clock to get those. I feel very pressured because I want to read those, and I just physically can't always do that. So we're in a bad situation here. I think there was a bad call.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have a lot of comment letters day of anyways.
Yeah.
I think we naturally procrastinate. And there's a lot going on for folks. So I think that's always going to be a problem. We're going to get, whatever deadline it is, we're going to get a bunch at the deadline. I just think it'll be important when the EIR window closes, like getting information sooner so that we can really do a justice to ask good questions and come prepared. Give some feedback ahead of time when we're asked questions about preparing for this so that we can have a more effective, decision-making process.
You also have to think too, the other project that we sent back is going to come back too, right?
Yeah.
At that same time, probably.
That's okay.
I know, it's okay. We like
Super
to read.
excited about it.
Me too.
Okay, so despite all the discussion, it doesn't seem like we're changing the motion or the recommendation from staff. We're going to stick with the 18th, but concerned generally that maybe, it was not done correctly in the first place, or at least today's meeting was premature.
I mean, we could address, I think there is reasonable consensus that would, in continuing the public hearing to August 18th, I would just note, we can address future meetings at that hearing, or?
Yeah, we don't have to commit to the whole schedule
I don't think we have
today.
to commit to it now, but I think we're all thinking the same thing, that just puts a lot of pressure on the third meeting needing robust time. So I think we could address that then, but I think that's the only decision to be made, is continue to a date.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, then, with that in mind, if there's no other comments, do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing on this project to August 18th.
Can I pause that for a minute?
Sure.
I did have one thing that came up that I should have asked a little bit earlier. I don't understand what the deal is with Comet Road.
Yeah.
In all the comments and the history and everything. My remembrance of driving up and down Comet Road twice in the last 50 years, I'm not understanding all of this with cul-de-sacs and easements, and so at the next meeting, can we maybe get a little bit of understanding? There's clearly some history there that I think might be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I think even a prospective city attorney, there's clearly some litigation that happened, or alleged litigation.
Yeah, like I
that
said,
happened,
there's a
so we
story.
should- Yep.
And it's.
I took a bunch of notes on the same,
Me too.
so.
No, good comment. All right, we have a motion on the table.
And I'll second it.
And Kelly, can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Werner,
Oh, yes.
She went backwards.
Commissioner Burkhardt,
Yes.
Commissioner Eichmann,
Yes.
Vice Chair Faina,
Yes.
Chair Keith.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Patrick Leclerc for the planning manager's report.
All right, well, good evening, Commissioners. Patrick Leclerc, Planning Manager here. Just wanted to give you a quick update on our schedule. Obviously, tonight we've taken action on continuing this item to the August 18th meeting. We have a couple of other smaller projects that may be ready. One or two may be ready on that day, so we'll see how that goes. After that, we're looking at having both meetings in September at this time. What exactly lands on those dates, I'm not sure. But just to give you sort of a brief overview of what's coming, the August 18th would be after our summer hiatus. So that'd be our first meeting back after hiatus. And then the next two meetings in September, we are currently forecasting. Also, I just wanted to reiterate that, I'm finalizing our memo for the end of the year, where I'm trying to finalize sort of the meeting schedule for the end of the year and the different items that'll be on those agendas, so you can be prepared for that discussion. So I should have that out for you later this week, or at the latest beginning of next week, so you'll know what the fall is going to look like through the end of the year. So those are my comments. Thank you for your comments this evening. I think staff and the applicant took good notes, so we'll be prepared to respond to those from there. So thank you for your time, and that concludes my comments.
Commissioners, any reports? Okay. No? Kelly, do we have any speakers for public participation? Oh, we do. All right. Could Cynthia Rodriguez come up for public participation?
Good evening, Cynthia Rodriguez. This regarding the Golden Valley Mixed Use Project, Master Case 21036. Some of these comments in here also relate to the current project that was being discussed. The project and any state orders for affordable housing in our city are in violation of California's own mandates under SB 32 and SB 35. 1, the project and others are in direct conflict with the primary concerns of Santa Clarita's residents, namely increased traffic and quality of life. 2, the draft mitigated negative...
I'm sorry, Cynthia, I'm sorry. Could we please take the conversations out back to respect Cynthia's time? Thank you.
My time was ready.
I know, sorry, keep going.
Sorry, can you rewind a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. It stopped at 2:17 and I was interrupted. So can you rewind a little bit?
She'll wait. She'll wait to press it. Go ahead.
Okay. The draft mitigated negative declaration study provided by Evacom Corporation should be disregarded because their findings are not in compliance with nor take into consideration the mandates by CEQA, CARB, SB 32, or SB 375, which require that statewide greenhouse gas emissions are reduced to 40% below the 1990 level by 2030. This project will increase greenhouse gases by causing more traffic, increased greenhouse gases due to cars being idle, creating a health hazard to nearby homeowners, drivers, and students. 3, both CARB and CEQA state that the public entities must engage in responsible decisions when performing their city planning duties to comply with SB 32 and SB 375. I quote, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for each region must then develop a sustainable community strategy that integrates transportation, land use, and housing policies to plan for achievement of the emissions targets for their region. SB 375 therefore provides key support to achieve the goals of AB 32, the California Global Warming Solutions Act of 2006. SB 375 instructs the California Air Resources Board to set regional emissions reduction targets from passenger vehicles. I ask, has that assessment been done, and what is our target? 4, a traffic study needs to be conducted to assess the impact of the Skyline, Bouquet Canyon, and Soledad projects and this other project when completed, as it is guaranteed they will use the Sierra Highway, Golden Valley, and Newhall Avenue arteries to get to the freeway or the old road, which are already congested. The state of California's mandate to meet affordable housing quotas in our city is in conflict with CEQA, where there is already significant population, referring to SB 32 and SB 375. Please note, our valley has limited roadways. If the intent is to create affordable housing at this location, MC 21036 does not meet affordable housing guidelines, as it is not near a source of significant public transportation. This project should be rejected and at the very least delayed to be reassessed for compliance with CEQA and CARB and the mandates under CARB.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I would like to recognize, thank you for clapping the right way. I think you were the only one in the room. I did notice, so thank you for that tonight, for not interrupting. With that, I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.